Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody, dear colleagues. As you know, item 11 on revision of the guidelines, 5E on the recommendations of the evaluation of the global strategy, 15 regarding the budget, as well as item 13A concerning the working methods of the evaluation and decision-making process of nomination are closely linked. Therefore, I have proposed to the Bureau to have a general discussion on these items and to proceed with the adoption of the relevant decisions one by one. The Bureau has accepted this working method. You would recall that these matters having been discussed during the debates of the two working groups regarding the operational guidelines and the budget, I would therefore propose to give the floor to the respective chairs of these two groups before opening the discussion on each of these items. Please also note that we have assigned item 5E to the operational guideline working group, and hence Mr. Tabet will cover this item as well. Are you in agreement with this procedure? Yes, that is. Thank you. And so, Mr. Tabet, you have the floor now.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. J'ai le plaisir de vous présenter les conclusions et les propositions de décision élaborées par le groupe de travail sur les orientations établi par le Comité du patrimoine mondial le 29 juin, selon l'article 11 de l'agenda de la 39e session. Le mandat du groupe de travail, tel que défini par le comité, concernait la révision des orientations comme présenté dans le document de travail WHC 1539 comme 11, et plus précisément l'annexe 1 de ce document, qui comprend la version annotée des orientations préparées par le secrétariat. Le comité a également demandé au groupe de travail sur les orientations, sur la révision des orientations, de prendre en compte les conclusions du groupe de travail ad hoc établi lors de la 38e session du comité à Doha, présentées dans les documents WHC 1539 comme 13A et WHC 1539 comme 13A en ce qui concerne les questions relatives à la révision des orientations. De plus, le comité a demandé à notre groupe de travail sur la révision des orientations de prendre en charge les tâches confiées par le comité au groupe de travail sur les méthodes de travail du comité. Groupe de travail établi en conformité avec la décision 38-9C concernant la recommandation sur l'évaluation de la stratégie globale. Il s'agit de documents de travail WHC 1539 comme 5E. Compte tenu de l'ampleur de la tâche qui lui a été confiée par le comité, le groupe de travail sur la révision des orientations s'est réuni à 6 reprises pendant la pause déjeuner de 13h à 15h et à 4 reprises le matin de 8h à 9h. Une réunion conjointe qui a duré 1h30 a été également organisée avec le groupe de travail sur le budget afin de traiter du nombre maximum de dossiers de nomination par État partie par an et du nombre maximum total de dossiers de nomination examinés chaque année. Au total, notre comité a travaillé de façon intensive pendant 16h30. 40 à 60 États parties étaient représentés dans les différentes séances de travail du comité. Je voudrais remercier ici tous les États parties, le secrétariat, ainsi que les traducteurs qui nous ont permis de mener à bien notre mission grâce à un travail intense et soutenu. Les conclusions et les propositions du groupe de travail sont présentées dans les documents 39 comme 11 révisés et 39 comme 5E qui vous ont été distribués ce matin. I will now continue in English. It was decided in the working group to tackle the issues concerning the revision of the operational guidelines by theme rather than in the sequence of articles, as this allowed for a more focused and streamlined discussion. Discussions of the first day covered three main themes, namely the integration of the historic urban landscape approach, the synergies of the World Heritage Convention with the 1954 Convention and its second protocol, as well as the proposed revision related to indigenous people. Day 2 focused on paragraph 61, number of nominations, cap, and priorities. On paragraph 68, tentative lists, and some of the outcomes of the ad hoc working group. On day 3, we continued the discussion on the number of nominations and tackled issues related to upstream processes and advisory missions. We continued with communication and dialogue, as recommended by the ad hoc group, both in the text of the operational guidelines and in Annex 6 concerning the evaluation procedures of ICOMOS and IUCN. Drafting groups were established to look into the matter of tentative lists, paragraph 68, with a representative of all regions, as well as the Annex 6 concerning the evaluation procedures of the advisory bodies, ICOMOS and IUCN, including representatives of advisory bodies concerned and state parties. Day 4 allowed us to cover a wide range of points, including issues related to the World Heritage Emblem and reactive monitoring, and to continue debating on the tentative lists paragraph. These matters were further discussed during the last 2 days of work of the group. The last meeting took place on July 5th, when some minor outstanding issues were addressed and the draft decisions 39-11 and 39-5E were debated. The following points were examined and are included in the revised operational guidelines for your consideration. The historic urban landscape approach, paragraphs 80, 82, 98, 99, 102, 111, and 112. The revision of these 7 paragraphs cover the integration of the historic urban landscape approach in the operational guidelines, as requested by the World Heritage Committee in Decision 37-12-2. The discussion stressed that Hull is a new category of sites, but is not a new category of sites, sorry, but concerned the integration of the main points of the 2011 UNESCO Hull recommendation in the guidelines. 2 minor amendments were made to the original proposal of the Secretariat, namely in paragraphs 82 and paragraph 1-2. Under this item, the group addressed the fact that Annex 3 needs to be updated, and this needs an in-depth reflection, possibly by a group of experts, if funding is available. The second theme that the group worked on is synergies between the 1972 and the 1954 Convention and its second protocol. Following the presentation of the proposal made by the Secretariat and the advisory bodies, the delegation of Belgium presented a new proposal to revise the nomination format. While the proposal was welcomed by some members of the working group, other members raised questions on the limited ratification of the protocol and its application to a limited number of cultural sites, excluding all natural and some cultural properties. It was also considered that the new proposal, which was submitted in the morning preceding the discussion of the working group, was not provided sufficiently in advance to allow for an in-depth examination. The working group, therefore, retained the proposal of the Secretariat and suggested a paragraph in the draft decision requesting this matter to be addressed during a future revision of the operation guidelines and also in the framework on the reflection on periodic reporting ahead of the third cycle. The third theme that the group worked on is the indigenous people, paragraphs 40 and 123. The Secretariat presented 2 amendments which explicitly refer to indigenous peoples with regard to World Heritage Management and nomination processes in the operational guidelines. The Secretariat recalled that there were a number of UN policy documents related to indigenous peoples from the 1989 ILO Convention 169 on indigenous and tribal peoples to the 2007 United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Moreover, it informed of decisions taken by the World Heritage Committee previously in this regard, such as 35-Com-12A, paragraphs 15E and F. The working group, after intense debate by all members, including the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, decided to amend paragraphs 40 and 123 of the operation guidelines. The other theme the working group worked is Annex 6, evaluation procedures of the advisory bodies, and relevant provisions in the main text of the operation guidelines and paragraphs 148 and 149. The working group decided to establish a drafting group on Annex 6 and other relevant provisions, with representatives of ICOMOS and IUCN and the delegations of India, Philippines, and Serbia. Very effective and constructive consultation took place, where some modifications were introduced to the newly proposed Annex 6, describing their respective procedures. Some amendments were also integrated in the main text of the operational guidelines. The outcomes of the ad hoc group, said group advisory bodies, on matters related to dialogue and consultation, expertise and transparency, were adequately and unanimously reflected into the main text of the operational guidelines and in Annex 6. The other issue is that of nominations, paragraph 61. The implication of limiting the number of nominations per state party, as well as limiting the overall number of nominations per year, was discussed in great detail, both in this working group as well as during the joint meeting with the budget working group, which took place on Thursday morning at 8 a.m. The overwhelming majority of state parties in the operational guidelines group supported the proposal presented in the working document, namely 1 site per state party per year and 25 as an overall number. The working group on the operational guidelines focused its discussions on the issue of the representativity of the World Heritage List and the need to reduce the growing imbalance between regions and cultures. It was noted that the number of state parties that nominated more than 1 property per year during the last decade was limited and covered regions and cultures that are well represented in the list, while underrepresented regions and cultures, namely Africa, and to a lesser extent Arab states and Latin America and the Caribbean, presented fewer number of nominations due to financial and technical constraints. The proposal presented by the working group, namely 1 site per state party per year, aims at putting a brake on the growing imbalance of the list. This proposal should be coupled with other measures related to capacity building and upstream process in order to help underrepresented regions and cultures to fill the gaps in the list. Both considerations on the representativity of the World Heritage list global strategy and budgetary considerations were taken into account during the joint meeting with the budget group, with almost the same outcomes as in the operation guideline group meeting the previous day. It was also decided to propose that this measure should become applicable as to February 2, 2017, so as to allow the state parties to adjust their planning. It was also agreed that the effectiveness of this measure shall be reviewed in 2021. We come then to the upstream processes, paragraph 62, 71, and 122. The working group discussed and agreed with the proposed revision of the working document while introducing some modifications. Most importantly, a definition of upstream processes was included in a footnote to paragraph 122, and the respective reference included to the FACET meeting report, Upstream Processes to Nominations, Creating Approaches in the Nomination Process, April 2010, FACET, Thailand, and the respective decision by 34COM, which took note of the report. We come then to the advisory missions, paragraph 28, 31, 38, 159, 160, 176, and 184. The revision concerning advisory missions was discussed immediately after the upstream processes, as these are closely related with regard to the tentative lists and the nominations. The proposed revision clearly highlights the difference between reactive monitoring missions and advisory missions. An explanatory footnote has been included in this regard, outlining advisory missions on one hand and reactive monitoring missions on the other. A number of other modifications were discussed and approved with a view of improving and streamlining processes and ensuring consistency. Reactive monitoring, paragraph 169 and Annex 3, the working group amended the paragraph 169 in order to reflect the new timeline for submission of state of conservation reports by state parties, which was approved by the 38th session of the World Heritage Committee. It also agreed with the proposed new format for the submission of state of conservation reports presented in Annex 13, noting that the format was also addressed in working document WHC 1539-7. The other issue is that of management plans, paragraph 115. The working group agreed that the paragraph 115 should be deleted for consistency and coherence, since it stood in contradiction to paragraph 108 and 132, and taking into account the recommendation of the external auditor. The working group also discussed management plans and systems in more general terms, without introducing any new amendments to the originally proposed. It was agreed to come back to this issue once the manual prepared by the advisory bodies on management of cultural and natural heritage was finalized. The other issue is that of Chapter 8, the World Heritage Emblem, and the related Annex 14. The working group fully agreed to the proposed revision of the Chapter 8 concerning the use of the World Heritage Emblem. The new Annex 14 concerning a table of uses of the emblem was also unanimously approved. We came then to the gender-neutral language. The working group agreed to the proposals put forward by the Secretariat to ensure gender-neutral language throughout the operation guidelines in line with the gender equality priority of UNESCO. During these discussions, it was also highlighted that there was a need to review the entire text of the operational guidelines to ensure proper concordance of a number of terms between English and French, and that it would be worthwhile for Francophone state parties to assist this exercise. We come then to partnership, paragraph 232. The purpose of this amendment was to update the references in the paragraph to the current comprehensive partnership strategy of UNESCO. It was just a sort of formal modification and amendment. Paragraph 252, international assistance. A minor amendment to streamline the process of examination of international assistance requests was also approved. Then we come to paragraph 158, statements of outstanding universal value. The proposed, 155, statements of outstanding universal value. The proposed amendment concerning the establishment of a procedure to revise the protection and management section of the statements of outstanding universal value. This section is the only one which is time-bound, was approved. Furthermore, it was decided that the World Heritage Center should correct factual errors as agreed with the relevant advisory bodies. We continue the other issues that our group tackled. We tackled the streamlining of paragraphs related to tentative lists and nominations. Paragraph 66, 128, 132, 141, 143, 148H, 164, 165, 166, Annex 2B and Annex 5 concerning executive summary. A number of paragraphs in the main text of the operation guidelines, as well as in Annex 2B, were amended in order to add missing cross-references and to streamline the text of the provisions related to tentative lists and nomination, and further to provide better guidance to state parties in the preparation of their tentative lists and nominations. We come now to the very important issue, which is that of the ad hoc group outcomes. During the last meetings of the group on 5 and 6 July, further to the proposal of the representatives of Philippines and Serbia, the working group reviewed the outcomes of the ad hoc working group, presented in documents WHC 1539 COM 13A and WHC 1539 COM INF 13A. In order to ensure that all recommendations to be addressed within the framework of the revision of the operational guidelines were discussed and that relevant amendments in the operational guidelines had been introduced. As most of the recommendations were integrated in the respective provisions of the guidelines and its annexes, there were only a few outstanding recommendations which the groups discussed and agreed on, thus achieving practically a 100% implementation of the operation guideline-related recommendations of the ad hoc working group. The last points discussed concerned mostly the inclusion of an incentive in the priority list under paragraph 61 for committee members whose nomination have not been reviewed during their mandate on a voluntary basis, as well as matters related to the making available of nomination files to committee members in a timely manner shortly after the completeness check. This is in paragraph 140 and 168. The other issue is that the agreed text for revision of the rules of procedure, new rule 23.3. The group also discussed one recommendation of the ad hoc working group, which is not related to the operational guidelines. Regarding the presentation of new proposals and amendments to proposal and draft decisions at least 24 hours prior to the discussion of the respective agenda item. It was agreed that this required an amendment of the rules of procedure, and the respective text was agreed. However, as the rules of procedures did not fall within the task of the working group on the operation guidelines, it was decided that this agreed amendment to the rules of procedures would be presented to the committee under item 13A, working methods of the evaluation and decision-making process of nomination, report of the ad hoc working group. We come now to paragraph 68. There was only one proposed amendment, paragraph 68, tentative list, where consensus could not be reached, and therefore the amendment was not approved. This amendment presented by the Secretariat suggested a mechanism to deal with tentative list site proposal when they were contested by third parties. In particular, in case of inconsistency with the World Heritage List and disputed territories. Extensive debates took place as to the nature and purpose of the proposed amendment. Following an in-depth discussion, the working group decided to establish a drafting group on paragraph 68 with one member by regional group: Colombia, Finland, Palestine, Philippines, Poland, and Turkey. The drafting group reported to the operational guidelines group that it had not reached consensus on paragraph 68, and that possibly the matter could be addressed during the next committee session. It also made a proposal that Annex 2A, tentative list submission format, be re-examined at the same time as paragraph 68 at the 40th session. This is the only paragraph in the operation guideline that the group couldn't agree upon. Finally, the group examined a draft decision to be presented to the committee under item 5E. The ad hoc working group on working methods to the committee established further to decision 38-9C. The operation guideline working group was mandated by the committee to address the matter of the implementation of the external auditor recommendation 20. The group met specifically on this topic on Saturday morning for July 4 from 8 to 9 o'clock. With an overwhelming majority, the group decided that the recommendation 20 of the external auditor, which concern issues of conflict of interest, should be implemented through amending the rules of procedure, and more specifically Rule 22.7 as follows. 22.7, representatives of a state party, whether or not a member of the committee, shall not speak to advocate the inclusion in the World Heritage List of a property nominated, the state of conservation of a property on their territory, or the approval of an assistance request submitted by that state, but only to deal with a point of information in answer to a question. This provision also applies to other observers mentioned in Rule 8. In fact, this paragraph 22.7 of the operation of the rules of procedure is exactly the same text that was in force before the 27th session. Before the 37th session in Cambodia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tabi. And I would like to congratulate you and all the members of the working group for your excellent work on this matter. And now, dear colleagues, I would like to know if there are any comments on the revised draft decision proposed by the working group regarding this item. I see India. Yeah. India, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, before I make my intervention, I would like to express my very deepest appreciation for the excellent work on which Mr. Tabet has led the working group on the operational guidelines. As he has so eloquently put it, there were several sessions, well attended, morning, afternoon, evening, and they have come up with some very concrete recommendations. So my congratulations to this group led by Mr. Tabet. Also, I would like to mention that there has been a working group on the budget, which has also done excellent work, and we will be coming and considering those documents also very shortly. And finally, there was also an intersessional working group, which was chaired by Germany, which did excellent work also, and which matters we will also be considering today. So taking all of these streams together, we now have a couple of draft decisions in front of us. I will go through all these draft decisions very quickly, if you allow me. Moving backwards, we have draft decision 39-Com-15 Rev. That is the budget, and we will come to it later. 39-Com-13A, according to me, according to India, is a very good draft decision. It faithfully reflects what has been ongoing and what has been discussed over this entire one-year period, following an initiative that was taken last year by some of us, where we felt that there should be greater consultation and greater dialogue between the states parties and advisory bodies. I have just one suggestion to make in 13A, that India would like to be associated also with this draft decision. So you have Germany, Philippines, Serbia, and India. We have absolutely no problems with this draft decision and would be happy to support it. And I think the bulk of the committee members would be quite pleased with this one. Turning to 5E, we are quite happy to live with this also. We are quite flexible on this. However, when we turn to draft decision 11, 39-Com-11, we notice that there are certain areas which certainly need a further discussion. Those are 61 and 68, as Mr. Tabet has himself mentioned, and I'm sure there are some other areas. So what India proposes is the following, that in the very positive spirit that we have adopted right through this committee meeting, let us adopt what we can adopt and where there is complete agreement. Where we feel that we need more discussion, let us not decide right here and now. Let us remit these matters, and I have raised paragraph 61 and 68 of the operational guidelines. There could be some others. Let us remit these areas intersessionally to a working group that is completely open, not just restricted to committee members, not just restricted to ad hoc groups that have been set up, but open to all, where these matters are discussed in greater detail, understood in greater clarity, and then we bring these matters to the next session of the World Heritage Committee and decide. And I assure you, Madam Chair, we can decide. This is not to parry, this is not to delay. We will take a decision in the next World Heritage Committee. And to cite very briefly, we did take an extremely difficult decision last year, when through the extraordinary session of the World Heritage Committee, we decided on a matter over which we had been torturing ourselves for years. So likewise, there are a few issues that need further discussion, and I would submit, I've just raised 61 and 68, I'm sure my colleagues around the room will raise some other issues. Let us remit those matters to a group that is open to all member states, that meets intersessionally, and which will bring matters to a head in the next session of the World Heritage Committee, chaired perhaps by Turkey, which is the next host of the World Heritage Committee. And in the meantime, let us adopt what can be adopted here and where there is almost overwhelming consensus. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, India, for this proposal, and we will discuss this as well. And now I continue with Jamaica, Turkey, Poland, and Peru, and then that means, which one? Japan. And I give the floor now to Jamaica. Please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jamaica commends the working group for what really would have been a very lengthy process. It is a comprehensive revised document that we have in front of us, and we want to express our thanks for the hard work that was put into it. We wish to, however, echo and support the proposal from India for further discussions, especially on critical areas that we feel are deserving of far more attention. We find, for example, that the inclusion or exclusion of basic terminologies are issues that certainly will impact certain states parties, especially that face particular challenges. And as a result of that, we really feel strongly that a little bit more time needs to be applied to discuss some of these critical areas. But again, we thank the working group for the very hard work that has gone into the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamaica and Chucky.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, Madam Chair, I have to also present our gratitude and admiration to the Dean of National Experts, the chairperson of the ad hoc group on operational guidelines, Honorable Mr. Tabet, for his wisdom and commitment and perseverance. We appreciate the work which has been brought forward and which has already started bearing its fruits, even pending the adoption of the recommendations, because by the initiation of the ad hoc group, already advisory bodies have done introspective homework, and then they have implemented, without waiting committees' decisions and advice, some of those measures which have been reflected in the outcome of this conference. The member states are very happy, and we hope that this process, both the upstream cooperation and transparency effort, continues. Revision of the operational guidelines has been a very important and complicated task before us that needed to be tackled with utmost care, and this was done. We have participated wherever possible in the effort with a spirit of compromise, and also guided by the Secretariat and World Heritage Center's efforts and experience. I think this session of the World Heritage Committee will adopt some very pertinent decisions. We also would very much like to see that this group continues its work, because reform is an ever-going, continuing process. And when an efficient body is established, we should maintain that. Secondly, Madam Chairperson, I will add my voice to the opinions expressed by the Honorable Delegate of India. We think identical in those regards. Out of this conference, no unresolved issues should remain. All agreed issues should be put into force and into effective implementation. And this should not, however, mean that the issues which need broader debate and participation by the state parties must be given the time and the flexibility so that constructive engagement produces broader consensus. On that point, Madam Chair, we believe and we fully agree that paragraph 61 requires further discussions. It is not the logic of the paragraph, the recommendations included in paragraph 61, because if we're going to really keep UNESCO where it is now, we have no other option but to introduce those restrictive measures on caps, on submissions, nominations, on annual quotas, etc. We know that with the current resources we cannot do. But as human beings, institutions also may make mistakes. I, for one, would like to express my personal opinion that during the prioritization exercise of UNESCO sectors, UNESCO higher executive organs, if they had introduced certain measures to restrain and diminish the operational capacity and financial resources of one of the most productive, most prestigious, most effective conventions and its specialized organ, the World Heritage Center, the state parties should have the right to come back to it in other sessions and review this. Because World Heritage Convention is going to be one of the pillars on which UNESCO will revive itself. I personally am convinced that we need a World Heritage Center, not restrained, not reduced, not diminished, but on the contrary, World Trade Center should be equipped with additional funds, additional institutions, and additional expertise and manpower that would allow it deliver on the mandate given by the convention. So restrictive measures which do not coincide or correspond with the provisions of the convention would require not only broader quorum, they require full support of the state parties who have undersigned and made that convention effective. In order not to extend further, Madam Chair, we believe the need to extend the mandate of the ad hoc group and, if necessary, expand its membership as proposed by the Honorable Delegate of India. And let us discuss further those issues without amending the current recommendations. I have, as I said, no opposition, no reservation to the logic of it, but let us also think innovatively on how we're going to create new funds. We know that state parties are not willing to increase their regular contributions. So are we going to the corporate sector? Are we going to, for example, go to a concept of twinning cities in more advanced countries which has resources to support the poorer quarters of the world and help them both in technical assistance and in finances? I would like to be given a chance to think about and to consult with my government and come back with more constructive proposals. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And now Poland has the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We would like to thank the Secretariat and the advisory body for this year very extensive revision of the operational guidelines. Having seen the draft document prepared for the session, we had doubts whether we would be able to review all the proposals, find a consensus over the difficult issues, and agree all the points by the end of the session. As it was said, we spent 16 hours on intense work which exhausted everyone, but happily we managed. It all was possible mostly thanks to a very effective chairing by Mr. Tabet. Thank you, Mr. Tabet, and the spirit of cooperation in the working group. We welcome the outcomes of the working group and will be happy to adopt them today as they are proposed. We would also like to thank everyone who attended the meetings and took part in the discussion. Before the revised decision, number 11, comes for discussion, we would like to inform you that we propose additional paragraph. Discussion on management plans and management system of nominated properties was raised by the working group and left for further consideration on to the next revision of the guidelines. We propose an amendment which reflects that discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Peru, you have the floor.
Gracias, Presidenta. Quisiera felicitar al grupo de trabajo por sus esfuerzos, por la seriedad con la que ha desarrollado su actividad. Coincido plenamente con lo expresado por la embajadora de la India, en el sentido que los temas que ha estado viendo el grupo de trabajo son temas que por su propia naturaleza requieren un estudio en profundidad y que en ese sentido deberíamos renovar el mandato para que esta reflexión continúe, muy especialmente en relación a el párrafo 61. El Perú, en ese sentido, se pronuncia a favor de la continuidad de la reflexión y de la actividad del grupo de trabajo. Quería, señora presidenta, sin embargo, recordar que el grupo de trabajo está reflexionando sobre el presente y el futuro, no solamente del comité, sino del sistema de preservación del patrimonio cultural y natural mundial, a partir de la consideración, un tanto a priori a mi juicio, de que el sistema que tenemos está bien y es el mejor. El sistema que tenemos se ha ido construyendo en la práctica. No es un sistema que se deriva directamente de las normas de la Convención, obviamente bajo el amparo de estas normas. En la práctica se han ido estableciendo nociones muy precisas, procedimientos, etcétera, que luego de 30 años de aplicación, creo merecen una reflexión, como se diría en francés, approfondie. El sistema puede estar llegando a un punto de saturación. El otro día en un periódico especializado leí una interrogante que yo la traigo acá. 1040 sitios pueden ser evaluados por 3 órganos consultivos que asisten al comité. Lógico, cuando este tema se ve, algunas respuestas son: prolonguemos cada 2 años las reuniones o pongamos un número de nominaciones por año. Pero estas son medidas aleatorias, no van al fondo del asunto. Creo, señora presidenta, que llegó el momento de propiciar una reflexión sobre los temas sustantivos de nuestra institución. Por ejemplo, en la práctica de los 30 años, la noción de el valor universal excepcional viene a ser lo mismo que la noción de valor universal excepcional cultural y tiene el amparo adecuado dentro de la Convención. ¿Qué significa esto en términos operativos? El sistema de la asistencia de los órganos consultivos. El artículo 7 de la Convención establece que el comité se asesorará por órganos consultivos. Nos hemos asesorado por 3 órganos consultivos que han dado todo de sí, su capacidad técnica, sus esfuerzos, los valoramos, los agradecemos. Pero creo que ha llegado el momento, por ejemplo, de contar con la asesoría de las mejores universidades del mundo en materia de arqueología, de los centros de investigación de las mejores universidades del mundo, de Europa, de Asia, de África, de América Latina en materia de etnohistoria, de los centros de investigación y de los centros de formación especializada sobre las artes, y tener de esa manera un sistema que puede ser inclusive más barato, puede resolver problemas financieros, porque estoy seguro, por ejemplo, que Yale u Oxford o la Universidad Autónoma de México podrán participar y tendrán una disposición casi sin costos en un sistema renovado de la participación de órganos consultivos, también en francés, élargi. Por otro lado, tenemos que ver respecto de algunas nociones que tienen que ver con las zonas de influencia, la contaminación visual, qué áreas, ¿no?, qué relación tienen con la concepción del desarrollo sustentable que se ha desarrollado y que hoy es parte de la propia noción del patrimonio cultural de la humanidad. Y tenemos que ver también algunos puntos sustantivos como los que yo señalé hace unos días respecto si vamos a exigir estándares como componentes del valor universal excepcional y qué tipo de estándares. Por todo esto, el Perú y algunos otros países vamos a promover y pedimos a la Secretaría la creación de algunos espacios de reflexión que podamos impulsar con vistas a hacer una revisión global e integral del sistema. Gracias, señora presidenta.
Thank you. Now Japan, Senegal, Philippines. Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Japan would like to join the previous speakers to express its sincere appreciation to the 2 chairs of the consultative bodies and their members and participants. Thanks to their efforts, we have made substantial progress in improving the operational guidelines and the sustainability of the fund. Japan also joins the previous speakers to support the proposal just made by our Indian colleague. Japan considers 3 issues, for example, which could go to the intersessional group. First, the issue of the cap on nomination. Second, most effective resource mobilization strategy. And third, a proposed amendment to Rule of Procedures 22.7. On the first, the cap on nomination, we have a strong hesitation to reduce the cap to 25 for 2 reasons. First, it has a great impact. It would have a great impact on the visibility of the convention. We should not close the door to those who are earnest about our vision of protecting heritage of outstanding universal value. Second, if we look at the cost effectiveness of the reduction to 25, it would amount to $142,000. Qatar, for example, announced 10 million to a new fund to protect World Heritage Sites affected by conflict or natural disaster last year. This year, Japan also made a contribution of 1.5 million to Iraqi heritage conservation. We need perhaps a bigger perspective to address this issue of conservation beyond what is currently available at the fund. Second, on the resource mobilization strategy, we recognize the centrality of the World Heritage Fund for the convention. Thus, we would like to ask the World Heritage Center and ourselves to engage more proactively with donors, potential donors, to help the fund. Lastly, on the proposed amendment to Rule 22.7, we are of the view that it is too early to go back to the previous format. We think that there is a merit from the perspective of due process in the current rule, which allows the nominating party to express their views. We may, though, be flexible. For example, we could modify the current text, for example, by limiting the intervention by the nominating state to a clarification or an update in case of new nominations. This could increase the efficiency of the committee proceedings without consuming time repetitively. Thank you.
Thank you. Now Senegal has the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Je voudrais commencer par vraiment féliciter, comme tous ceux qui m'ont précédé, notre Président qui a réussi dans la bonne humeur et l'efficacité à nous amener tous dans la même direction. Et je pense, comme il l'a dit, qu'il y a eu un consensus large autour des principales questions qui ont été évoquées. Mais bien évidemment, consensus ne signifie pas unanimité. Il y a des questions qui seront certainement discutées par l'Assemblée générale et d'autres qui vont l'être par les différents groupes qui sont au travail. Ceci dit, nous pensons qu'à partir du moment où les orientations ont entre autres comme vocation d'encadrer la mise en œuvre de la Convention, il est important, comme l'a dit tout à l'heure l'honorable délégué du Pérou, d'être dans une perspective de dépassement. Manifestement, au niveau de certains de nos instruments, nous avons atteint nos limites et qu'il est aujourd'hui devenu urgent de faire une véritable introspection. Comme l'honorable représentant du Pérou l'a dit, nos organisations consultatives, qui sont vraiment les instruments de mise en œuvre les plus efficaces que nous avons jusqu'à présent trouvés, ont peut-être atteint leurs limites dans certains domaines. Une relecture des méthodes de travail s'impose manifestement, parce que dans tous les domaines, qu'il s'agisse de l'environnement, qu'il s'agisse des sciences sociales, qu'il s'agisse de la culture, qu'il s'agisse des arts, etc., des évolutions significatives sont en cours dans tous les domaines, et notamment au niveau des universités où nous avons une expertise prolifique qui peut être mise en contribution aussi bien dans le Conseil des États, dans l'évaluation des biens, que dans la mise en œuvre d'un certain nombre d'initiatives, et surtout, c'est très important, dans la réflexion prospective. Cela est important, surtout quand on se place du point de vue africain. Nous avons dit et redit ici à plusieurs reprises que nous sommes à chaque fois heureux, joyeux, enchantés, quand nous voyons un bien qui rend compte de l'histoire industrielle, qui rend compte des immenses conquêtes de l'homo sapiens sapiens que nous sommes. À chaque fois que nous voyons ces réalisations-là célébrées au patrimoine mondial, nous applaudissons. Mais quand nous voyons dans nos orientations qu'il est même interdit de prospecter sur des sites du patrimoine mondial, qu'il est interdit d'exploiter, qu'on met des lignes rouges partout, nous disons qu'il y a un problème. Parce que les interdits, vous savez, c'est fait pour être violés, à commencer par notre père Adam. En conséquence, nous invitons très très vivement la Convention à faire preuve de dépassement, à utiliser les exemples, les bonnes pratiques qu'on a vues. Je pense que le cas de l'Australie est intéressant. D'autres cas le seront certainement dans les années à venir, pour qu'on essaie de trouver une bonne articulation entre sauvegarde, préservation du patrimoine, aménagement et développement des terroirs. Ce n'est pas imaginable et ce n'est pas acceptable que des territoires grands comme la France soient déclarés zone interdite. On ne va pas aménager, on ne va pas prospecter, on ne va pas. Nous pensons que la défense est la plus mauvaise des positions pour une convention comme la nôtre, qui a toujours fait preuve d'une très grande générosité, d'une très grande capacité, et qui a toujours montré à l'humanité, dans les cas les plus difficiles, qu'il était possible, dans cette enceinte du patrimoine mondial, de mettre tout le monde d'accord, comme on l'a fait hier encore. Donc, en conséquence, dans le cadre des orientations, nous souhaitons que ce travail-là soit fait. En tout cas, au niveau du groupe Afrique, on va le faire, et nous pensons que l'initiative prise par les collègues du Pérou va dans le même sens. Il faudrait qu'on ait une capacité de dépassement, qu'on sorte des sentiers battus pour donner un futur acceptable et assumable par tous à cette convention-là. Merci.
Thank you. Philippines has the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We thank the chair of the working group for his report and congratulate him for all the hard work. The recommendations of the ad hoc working group and proposed amendments submitted by India, Serbia, and the Philippines related to strengthening dialogue and consultation between nominating states parties and advisory bodies were discussed in the working group and are reflected, as Mr. Tabet mentioned, in the revisions of the operational guidelines and its Annex 6. We'd like to especially thank the representatives of ICOMOS and IUCN, which were part of the drafting group on these issues. Our discussions were very constructive and conducted in a cooperative spirit, and this allowed us to agree on common formulations on all points. Notable amendments being introduced, such as the sending of a short interim report to nominating states parties, outlining the status and relevant issues pertinent to evaluations, and maximizing opportunities and resources in an equitable and cost-effective manner for dialogue with states parties through face-to-face meetings and or teleconferences. We believe all these new amendments benefit all parties and strengthen the system as a whole. We therefore look forward to their adoption. With respect to paragraph 61 of the operational guidelines, Madam Chairperson, we can support limiting nominations of a state party to only one per year in the context of the need to attain a representative, balanced, and credible World Heritage List. If we can agree to this measure, we believe that we may not have to set a cap at this session. However, having listened very closely to the views of other committee members, in order to arrive at a strong consensus decision, we support the suggestions of the distinguished ambassadors of India, Turkey, Peru, and Japan to continue the discussion and extend the mandate of an open-ended ad hoc working group which can meet intersessionally, discuss these issues, and formulate specific recommendations that can be presented to the next session of the committee. Taking note of the need that we need further dialogue and the consultation amongst committee members and all states parties, as well as with the Secretariat and advisory bodies to resolve these matters. Over the last year, the ad hoc working group proved to be a very effective informal mechanism, and my delegation thinks it can be utilized again to achieve progress on these issues, as well as generate creative thinking and new ideas in a forward-looking and pragmatic manner. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And now Malaysia, Finland, Kazakhstan. Malaysia has the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Malaysia delegates would like to commend Mr. Tabot and the advisory bodies, as well as the task force for the intensive, hard and diligent work in coming up with this review of the operational guidelines. Nevertheless, we would like to second our honorable members, India, Turkey and the rest, in postponing the approval of some paragraphs, in particular para 61, A to D, to be discussed in greater details and by a greater spectrum but focused group of stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you. Finland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I would also like to express my warmest thanks to the working group on operational guidelines, especially to Mr. Tabot for your leadership and for your skills guiding the work. I have listened carefully to the previous speakers, and I have to say that it's also the suggestions made for the future work. I think it's for us extremely important that we consider how we use our time and human resources, how we use the session where all the delegations, not only the members of the committee, but also observers have arrived, and we have established working groups to handle specific questions in order to progress in important matters. Therefore, Finland strongly supports the draft decision as presented by the chairperson of the working group, including paragraph 61. We state this because we shouldn't undermine the hard work made by the working group during the last week by opening the draft decision. And as was just heard from the chairperson of the working group, an overwhelming majority of the working group supported the limitation of 25 nominations per year in order to address the imbalance of the World Heritage List. Finland is very open to continuing discussing issues related to the imbalance of resources and workload, but we should really consider how we can strengthen and safeguard the credibility and objectivity of the committee and economize our work. And a strong message from this session is needed, not only that we address these issues and that we discuss, but there is also a need to take decisions how we can rebalance the situation of the workload and the resources. I also would like to refer to the statement made by the distinguished delegate of India concerning the open-ended working group. As said, we are very open to participate in any discussion that this committee will decide upon. But we do need to take also into account that not each and every delegation has the resources and capabilities to participate actively in an intersession working group.
And I would like to finish just by stating that we support what was said by Poland, and we welcome the outcome of the working group and ready to approve it as it was presented. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Finland. Now, Kazakhstan and Portugal and Germany, and I give the floor now to Kazakhstan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My delegation also wants to mention excellent job done by working group on operational guidelines headed by Mr. Tebet. And the summary of working group, which is well reflected in the revised decisions that we have before us. However, we consider that there are some paragraphs which we consider need to be further discussed and carefully analyzed. That especially concerns paragraph 61. Thus, we would support proposal made by India, Turkey, and some other delegations here. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Portugal, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We would also like to congratulate the working group and everyone involved in it, because an excellent work was made and very important conclusions were achieved and consensus as well. We think that the operation guidelines are really important because the guidelines are...
Please, Peru. We cannot. Please. Please, Peru.
It's okay. It's okay now.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. We heard every word before. Okay. Portugal, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We do believe that the operation guidelines are fundamental in the implementation of the convention, so it is rather important that these discussions are taken among the members of the committee and among states party, so that the convention can move forward and be updated as society updates itself as well. As regards the proposal by India, we do agree that whatever can be, wherever consensus can be achieved, this decision can be adopted. However, we have several issues, and as regards point 61, I would like to underline that there is not only an issue about the number of nominations that each state party can present by year and the annual limit, but also the issue regarding the state parties on point C9, which is a new point, that those state parties who on a voluntary basis do not have a nomination reviewed by the committee during their mandate, which is the case of Portugal, that they may have some precedence after the end of their mandate. So we do believe that this issue and this point, which we agree with all of it, should be further discussed in this session, and we agree with Finland that this matter should not be postponed later. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you. And now Germany, then Korea, Algeria, and Colombia. Germany, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Germany fully supports what has been said by Poland, the Philippines, Portugal, and Finland. Maybe we could also go along with the proposal of India and Turkey in regard to the limitation of 25 sites per year, but we should keep paragraph 61b, which says that which defines that the state parties could nominate only one nomination per year. Furthermore, for us, it is very important to stick to the revision of paragraph 61c, and it has been stated just by Portugal that this is very, very important in regard to those state parties who are running in November for a seat in the committee, and they should be on the safe side if they like to withdraw or to not put forward their nominations during their mandate.
Thank you. And now Korea has the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would also like to thank especially the chair of the working group for his dedication and hard work to make all this revision possible. The working group pondered on multiple issues in a very concentrated amount of time, and we answered to the constraints of the resources, the budget, the recommendations of the external auditor, and requests from the General Assembly, and to respond to the need for balancing the gap in the World Heritage Convention and in between the over and underrepresented states parties in line with the global strategy which guides our work in the convention. Of course, the budget constraints have triggered many revisions to happen faster, but it is not only to these constraints that we are answering, and we believe that setting a cap on the nominations and on several other issues have been also discussed for a considerable amount of time, where we have explored many other options. We also have to support the comment made by the distinguished delegate of Finland, who commented that it's difficult to engage so many states parties to participate in these discussions outside the venue of a committee meeting, and we have discussed all these measures at length here at this session. Korea has participated actively in the Operational Guidelines Working Group, and we fully agree with the proposals made and presented by the chair and by the working group covered under this item. And we believe that perhaps we could go with having one nominations per state per year, and maybe waiting a little bit for proposing a cap on the 25 overall number of nominations to be reviewed. We also would like to support the amendment for the Rules of Procedure, Article 22.7. On an ending note, we would like to support the suggestion of Poland to review the aspects of the management systems and management plans to evolve related articles in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Algeria.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. La délégation algérienne remercie le groupe de travail sur les orientations générales mené sous la direction de M. Dabet, que nous félicitons parce que son rendu est au rendez-vous et c'est un travail laborieux et bien ardu. Madame la Présidente, le texte des orientations est un document à caractère réglementaire qui est assimilé par ses effets à l'égard des parties concernées comme un document d'obligation, et le mot est fort, pratiquement opposable. Mais disons que les États parties sont obligés d'en faire une application. Et nous en sommes d'accord. L'Algérie, lors du dépôt de sa candidature, avait souscrit à la proposition de ne pas présenter de site et de limiter son mandat à 4 ans. Nous sommes aujourd'hui d'accord avec les propositions qui sont faites de la limitation du mandat, de la limitation du dépôt des dossiers à 25 et des dispositions qui y sont rattachées. Cependant, nous savons tous que ce qui fonde la Convention, c'est l'inscription des sites, des biens, dont la VIE est reconnue. Et l'inscription des sites et des biens se fait par le biais d'un comité qui a une durée de mandat fixée dans la Convention. Cet objectif constitue donc une clause principielle de la Convention. Les orientations peuvent-elles y déroger et interpréter ce principe énoncé clairement dans la Convention? Je souhaiterais poser cette question au conseiller juridique avec votre permission, Madame la Présidente. Sinon, pour le reste, nous sommes d'accord, à part peut-être quelques remarques de forme sur les projets de décision. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you. And now Colombia.
Gracias, señora Presidenta. En relación con el punto 15, reconocemos la decisión de la creación del grupo de trabajo ad hoc en 2014 así como las recomendaciones del grupo de trabajo sobre las guías operativas bajo la conducción del señor Tabet. Consideramos que en la mayoría de las reformas de las guías operativas propuestas existe un consenso. No obstante, en cuanto al párrafo 61 de las mismas, existe una necesidad de profundizar en el alcance de su implementación y en ese sentido, este debate debería continuarse en el comité y ampliarse a observadores del mismo, por lo cual apoyamos la propuesta expresada por la distinguida embajadora de la India para extender el mandato del grupo de trabajo ad hoc, tal como ha sido apoyado por anteriores oradores. En cuanto al punto 5e, Colombia considera que mantener el artículo 22.7, tal cual como fue enmendado en 2013, es importante, ya que ofrece a los Estados parte la posibilidad de explicar su experiencia en el proceso de preparación de un expediente de nominación o de un informe sobre el estado de conservación de los sitios. Consideramos que este mecanismo vigente ha aumentado la confianza y ha reforzado el diálogo entre los Estados parte y el comité. Situaciones de último momento, así como información complementaria sobre un sitio o bien, se han presentado y por medio de esta regla se ha otorgado el espacio necesario para que los Estados parte puedan explicar lo que sea necesario, permitiendo al comité tomar una decisión integral. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Now Turkey and Vietnam and Croatia. Turkey, you have the floor. Again.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is not to repeat what I have said. This is based on the deliberations that I need to make a clarification about my observation. I have no problem in bringing certain limitations to the extent that, or provided that these are not going to clash with the letter and the spirit of the Convention. The Convention aims at conserving collective heritage of humanity. We have, and Dr. Rao knows the exact count, but hundreds of pending sites in the tentative list. And everybody knows and understands in this room that with this current speed, it will take almost a century for the committee to finalize the current level, and the list keeps on growing. So the aim, our aim while proposing the extension of the mandate of the ad hoc group was also to give the chance to discuss creatively, as one of our colleagues has said, the other crucial issues. The idea is to find, not only to get the honor and pride and promotion of having the site inscribed. Essential thing is to conserve, to refurbish, and to manage the site. And these pending sites, which will have to wait for 50 years maybe, some of them are very fragile. We will lose them. So we have to find an interim way, maybe a new mechanism which will help, which will trigger, maybe after a preliminary selection, which will trigger some of the protective measures, site management obligations to be fulfilled by the state party. We need to really think innovatively and look forward. The second thing, regarding the cap, Madam Chair, altogether, after reducing by half the number of files you're going to look, you're going to spare $100,000. And if this committee cannot provide $100,000 to the World Heritage Center, I think it's useless to be here, to keep on sitting here and convening every year for 10 days. We will have to look into this aspect. The last and not the least, Madam Chair, if we're going to put a restriction on state parties on their nominations, we have to find a threshold. Which state parties are going to submit? Those who have more than 10 sites already inscribed? 20 sites? 50 sites? Where are we going to put the threshold, Madam Chair? Let's think about that.
Thank you. Vietnam and Croatia.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for giving the floor to Vietnam. Vietnam would like to make the three following points. Firstly, in terms of rationale, Vietnam has no objection to the conclusion of the working group, which we commend tremendously for their efforts. Because we believe that is, number one, have exhausted their efforts to come up with that draft decision as it stands, and it drives to the efficiency of the House. So in terms of rationale, Vietnam is fully subscribed to that, even the draft text as it stands. Given the experience that Vietnam had when Vietnam was member of the Committee on Intangible Cultural Heritage, Vietnam was one of the countries that initiated the process of putting the cap on the nomination. And finally, the committee came up with a decision to put the cap for the number of nominations as well as the cap, one nomination for each country. So in terms of rationale, our position is the same. Our second point is in terms of procedure. In terms of procedures, we think that some of the colleagues that spoke before me have their point. Here, this is the matter we need perhaps to explore further, because we believe that the draft decision as it stands that Vietnam can go along with is not necessarily the ideal option. Because as some of the other delegates spoke out, we did not save much money and we may damage the visibility of the convention. But more importantly, I think it needs for us some time. Be given the difference between the two conventions, the one in 1972 and the one in 2003, in the sense that the 2003 is quite new and people can interact immediately given the fact that some country bombarded the committee with a lot of nomination. But the 172 convention is a different one. This one has been well established in history and it came to mind and heart of many people. So changing that does take a process, and that process requires a consideration for many parties in order to arrive at a very strong consensus. My third point, Madam Chair, is in terms of emotion. Yesterday we have seen so many delegations come in here to celebrate the successful inscription of their nomination. We have listened to their concerns and how proud they are and how hard they work. There are some nominations that takes 15 years. There are some nominations that take 10 years, like the one from Japan, from Le Climat de Bourgogne from France. And in other countries, the tentative list is long. Some have 50 tentative lists. So how we are going to explain to all these people when they have waited for years and suddenly you put on the cap and suddenly you say that no, you cannot make that nomination. So the view of our delegation that we also need that aspect, emotional, sentimental, the expectation of the people who are not sitting here, who are not listening to us. So we need to give them a chance, and we need to think, we believe that we need to have a roadmap. Definitely we will arrive at a decision as we experienced in the 2003 convention. But that roadmap requires a process of education, of public awareness raising, of the necessity, and we need to explain to people why we have to make that decision on the cap. So with that 3 points, I would like to state again, Madam Chair, Vietnam is ready to go along with what has been proposed by some Group 1 countries, but we think that it's better to think it further, especially in the respect for the high expectation of all the people that keep looking to us with a lot of high expectation and hope. I thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. Croatia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We would like to join all the other previous speakers in commending Mr. Tabet for his wise chairmanship and the whole working group for this really demanding job. Croatia could go along with limiting nomination to 1 per country, and what is very important to mention here, if this is all to reach the balanced and credible mechanisms for a credible and balanced World Heritage List, it is very important that we think about new mechanism and possible new funds and partnerships in achieving this, and also very important conservation and management issues. So
this is the point that I think really needs to be further discussed and explored by this committee together with the advisory bodies, World Heritage Center, and all the other state parties who are willing to help the credible and balanced list. So maybe also, I'm not sure, we are not sure if the time is mature for setting the cap. And as there are also quite a few things to be tackled, maybe we really also need more time for discussion, for otherwise we would go for consensus. But if there are issues that can be not accepted at this session, we have to think ahead how to follow. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Portugal again, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have listened carefully to what the other state parties have said, and we do believe that consensus must be reached. And if further discussion and further thought about this matter is necessary, so it is good that a working group is established to discuss further these issues. However, as regards this Article 61, we would propose that point C9 should be approved, and the other points that have been added should be postponed until further discussion. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you. No more. Oh, Philippines.
Thank you, Chair. We support the previous statement of Portugal that other items under 61 be deferred or discussed in an intercessional mechanism, but Article 61C, small 9, could be adopted at this session. Thank you.
61?
Small, 9.
Yeah, small.
This one. 61C,
small
9.
Small 9, I see. Yeah. Well, firstly, I would like to give the floor to the legal advisor to answer the question of Algeria and India.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say that I know this is a very tough debate, and certainly I think the Chair and the World Heritage Center are not in an easy position. It is very difficult to say where the consensus is going, but one thing is very clear, that there are many, many issues that need a further discussion. There can be no doubt about that. Many, many speakers have thrown up questions to which there are no easy answers, and I do not see how we can get answers to those questions in limited time and with very, very limited participation. And I'd just like to say one more thing, that I do not believe it will be useful to get piecemeal solutions. You cannot have piecemeal solutions to matters that require an in-depth discussion. And let us not forget that many of these issues are interlinked. So how is it that we can adopt piecemeal solutions? My request is to the committee, which has worked so well over the last 10 days, that let us remit some of these matters to a working group that will meet intersessionally, and through hard work, I think we can arrive at a solution, much as we did in the extraordinary session held in Paris last year, where we tackled an equally difficult question to which there were equally difficult answers. So my request would therefore be to remit these difficult issues to the group, and where there is agreement, so that there's no total despondency. The working group, the operational guidelines group, has worked very hard. Let us quickly agree. To my mind, that is the most constructive solution from these various issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Germany, Serbia, and Peru. Germany, you have the floor. And then Finland.
I will be brief, just to support the Philippines with the proposal to keep at least 61C9, and I like to add only also 10 and 11. That these three subparagraphs do not refer the gap, but I think do not refer to a gap of 25, but to the gap of 45 as well. Therefore, we should keep these sub-paragraph as well.
Now Serbia.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. Serbia would first of all like to applaud the hard work of Mr. Tabet and all the countries who actively participated in the work of the working group on the operational guidelines. Let me also join Philippines in thanking ICROM and ICOMOS and IUCN for their very constructive approach through which we have been able to translate the recommendations of the ad hoc working group into the operational guidelines. As for the outcome of the working group, Serbia can in principle support the outcomes, including limiting the number of nominations to 1 per state parties. However, based on the discussion so far, it seems to us that there is no consensus in the committee, and we do believe that these are very important questions which do require consensus of the members of the committee and even broader consensus between the state parties to the convention. Therefore, I think we could go along with the proposal to establish an open-ended working group which would meet intersessionally in Paris, where all state or the majority of state parties have their representations. This open-ended working group would be a useful mechanism to discuss not only the issues on which currently there is no consensus in the committee, but also some other important issues which are vital for the credibility of the convention, such as, for instance, the fundraising efforts in order to increase the sustainability of the fund. Thank you.
Well, Peru and then Finland and Algeria said. Okay, well, I will then make a suggestion.
Varias de las delegaciones que han intervenido creo que han puesto en manifiesto la preocupación bastante extendida que los temas que estamos viendo, más allá del tratamiento puntual y específico que han sido objeto en el grupo de trabajo, conllevan consecuencias, impactos, interrelaciones sobre asuntos absolutamente sustantivos que tienen que ver con el futuro y con la sustentabilidad de la institución del Patrimonio Mundial y de la Convención. Creo que la embajadora de la India ha sido especialmente reflexiva sobre este punto y el Perú expresa el respaldo a su propuesta de que pasemos la consideración de este tema a una sesión intersesional de composición abierta. Gracias.
Yeah. Now Finland.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Sorry to go back, but I have one comment and then I have a question to the World Heritage Center. And the comment is about real cost. Now, some of the previous speakers, I don't recall anymore who it was, but suggest or actually had an opinion about the real cost of the new nominations. I think we should be very precise about this issue. In our understanding, it is not only the $142,000 US referred to, because there are also costs related to secretariat and advisory bodies staff time, and many new sites come back in a state of conservation cycle and in sites inscribed this year. So we should have a comprehensive analysis of the cost. And my question to the Secretariat is about the cost implications of the open-ended working group that was suggested also here. And also, do you have something to say how, if this kind of an working group should be established, how to cover these costs created by the work of the group? Thank you.
Well, I would like to make a remark, and I would like to do this in German. If you please would use your headset. Thank you. Ich glaube, wir sind jetzt an einem Punkt angelangt, wo wir auch Mehrfachmeldungen haben des gleichen Staates und des Komiteemitgliedes, und ich kann das gut verstehen, weil wir in einigen Punkten eine zunehmende Übereinstimmung haben, aber trotzdem noch nicht die völlige Übereinstimmung. Und ich sehe, dass wir weiteren Diskussionsbedarf haben in der Frage der Reduzierung der Nominierungen. Gleichzeitig gibt es den Wunsch, nicht alle Punkte wieder erneut aufzumachen, und den Vorschlag von Indien, wenn wir diesen Vorschlag so aufgreifen könnten, für eine Open-Ended Working Group, die bis zur nächsten Sitzung des Welterbekomitees tagt und dann sich aber beschränkt auf bestimmte Punkte, nicht sozusagen alles, sondern auf bestimmte Punkte. Und einer der Punkte, um den es offensichtlich ja vielen hier geht, ist der Paragraph 61. Ich hatte den Eindruck, dass sehr wohl die Notwendigkeit gesehen wird, hier eine Reduzierung vorzunehmen, wenn die Finanzsituation sich nicht verbessert, aber vielleicht auch dann, wenn sich die Finanzsituation verbessert, weil die Liste des Welterbes nicht endlos wachsen kann. Aber ich glaube, dass die Vorschläge, die jetzt auf dem Tisch sind, Reduzierung auf 25 oder auf eine Nominierung pro State Party, dass die in der Tat noch einmal in einer solchen Working Group diskutiert werden sollten. Ich sage das auch vor dem Hintergrund der Äußerung von Vietnam, dass man alle auf diesem Weg mitnehmen sollte. Und ich glaube, das ist wichtig. Der zweite Punkt, um den es dann auch gehen sollte, sich noch einmal der Frage zu stellen, wie kann man Ressourcen besser mobilisieren. Aber ich glaube, das wird die Frage der Reduzierung von Nominierungen nicht völlig klären. Und deshalb wären das sicherlich diese beiden Punkte wesentlich für eine solche Arbeitsgruppe. Und dann ist noch sehr genau genannt worden, mehrfach der Punkt Paragraph 22.7. Das müssten wir klären im Laufe der Beratung dann, wenn es um diesen Paragraphen geht, ob das wirklich notwendig ist. Insofern würde ich gerne sagen, lassen Sie uns jetzt zunächst die zwei Fragen beantworten. Einmal, die gestellt worden ist von Algerien an den Legal Advisor. Dann die Frage, die gestellt worden ist zu den Kosten an das Sekretariat. Dann würde ich gerne mit Ihnen ganz konkret die Punkte, die Paragraphen der Draft Decision 11 durchgehen, und was dann von diesen Punkten übrig bleibt, und ich habe einen gewissen Eindruck davon, das könnte man in eine solche Arbeitsgruppe verlagern. Könnten wir so vorgehen? Und ich würde natürlich vorher auch noch einmal Mr. Tabet das Wort geben. Ja. Ja, aber ich sehe, dort sind noch nach wie vor einige Wortmeldungen. Vielleicht können Sie sich direkt auf diesen Vorschlag beziehen. Ja. Also ich frage Algerien, wollen Sie sich noch einmal zu Wort melden?
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Vous avez anticipé sur mes questions. Merci.
Danke. Turkey?
Yes, Madam, 61 and plus 61, C, 9, 10, 11 are acceptable to us, so we support the German proposal.
Thank you. Japan?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We thought we would be in the same position as other members, but then we have a question. That is, suppose cultural heritage nomination does not hit any of these I to 11, that is XI. So just in the order of the date of receipt, does it have to come after 11, that is nominations from state parties which do not pay their compulsory contributions? I'm sorry to ask this question, but we would like to share how everybody else reads this paragraph, subparagraph C.
Also ich glaube, jetzt sollten wir nicht noch eine zusätzliche Runde aufmachen, dass alle sich zu diesem Punkt melden, sondern ich glaube, es wäre gut, wenn Mr. Tabet dazu auch noch mal Stellung nehmen würde. Sonst haben wir eine endlose Diskussion und wir haben ja schon gesagt, dass wir den 61 mit einer bestimmten Konzentration in diese Arbeitsgruppe einbeziehen würden. Ich darf jetzt das Wort an Portugal geben.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I would just like to make a small clarification regarding paragraph 61C9, because this issue doesn't really have to do with a budget or with a cap on nominations, but the working group, as I remember it, decided to include this paragraph regarding the conflict of interest that may arise between the members of committees when they present nominations, and then they will have to defend their nominations, and they are the promoters as well. So this does not have to do with the budget or with the cap of nominations, so it should be discussed aside that matter. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you. And now Peru.
Muchas gracias, Presidenta. El Perú concuerda plenamente con el procedimiento que usted ha señalado. Nos preocupa un poco que constriñamos demasiado el mandato del grupo de trabajo, porque evidentemente, como lo hemos escuchado en la sala, los asuntos financieros están interconectados con otros aspectos. Y dentro de los aspectos financieros no nos podemos limitar, por ejemplo, a la cuestión de obtener nuevos recursos, sino a dar mayor racionalidad a los recursos con que contamos y respecto de los que obtendremos. Por eso, señora Presidenta, sin variar sustantivamente su propuesta, creo que cuando refiramos el mandato del grupo de trabajo, lo podríamos hacer para que tome en cuenta las cuestiones que están en el punto 61 y asuntos conexos. Esto nos permitiría mantener de todas formas esa respuesta que debemos dar a aspectos que ciertamente están interconectados tanto en lo normativo como en lo conceptual y lo práctico. Gracias, señora Presidenta.
Thank you. I have now two more speakers, Jamaica and India. Jamaica, you have the floor, and then India.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, we have had a fulsome discussion on this matter, and yet we are very far from closure. In my delegation's earlier intervention, we had indicated our support for the proposal by the delegation of India that we really ought to revisit 61 and to establish a working group to look at 61. Suggestions have been made that we perhaps isolate a few paragraphs and deal with these individually. My delegation is of the view that we really ought to be looking at the paragraph in its entirety. The paragraph is, all the paragraphs to some extent are linked. And there is a sense that if we should begin to look at the paragraphs individually, we could lose the whole. And therefore, to avoid the consequential effects that this could have, we would really insist that we look at paragraph 61, all the elements, and in this working group that has been proposed by India and supported by many other delegations, the idea that we could perhaps start looking at those countries or states parties who have had nominations or who have refrained from nominating sites while they are members on the committee, it will in fact have an effect on the cap. Because immediately one is suggesting that if we place a cap, those countries would have priority in consideration of nominations. So we would suggest, Madam Chair, that we look at paragraph 61 in its entirety. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And now, India, you made the proposal, and you have the word now.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
The floor now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I must say that I agree with Jamaica completely and fully. She could not have put it better. I do not see how you can look at a paragraph in isolation. How can you look at parts of a paragraph in isolation? This is what I meant when I said, let us not go in for piecemeal solutions. Piecemeal solutions will not provide the best results. I think the ambassador of Peru also said the same thing. We have to look at para 61 in its entirety. It's not that one part is related to finance and that the other is not. That's fallacious. I think the entire paragraph must be looked at in its entirety, and only then can you arrive at an optimal solution that will satisfy all. It is not the purpose for some of us to leave triumphant and the others to be left high and dry. It is the purpose of this committee to leave everyone victorious. So therefore, I repeat that let us remit these matters in their entirety to a working group. Let us give ourselves the time frame of 1 year, and let us arrive at a decision. We've done it before, we'll do it again. Thank you.
Oh, I've quite a lot of, very long list again. May I ask you, I would like to have both the answers to Algeria and Finland, and I would like to give the floor to Mr. Tabet as well, and then I would like to continue with the list. I think that could clear something, yeah? All right? So, the legal advisor has the floor.
I want to be first careful that I've understood correctly the question that was posed by the distinguished representative of Algeria. I think it related to a concern about changing the cap from 2 to 1 and 45 to 25 based on a concern that that might be seen as in some fashion inconsistent with the convention. Was that the concern?
Dans la Convention, il y a un principe général que la Convention est fondée sur l'inscription des biens sur la liste du patrimoine mondial. C'est un principe général d'inscrire les biens qui n'est pas interprétatif. Le deuxième point, c'est celui du mandat. Celui qui inscrit, c'est un organe. Et cet organe est le comité qui a un mandat fixé. Est-ce que les orientations peuvent déroger à ces deux principes généraux? Merci, Madame.
I see no difficulty with that. In fact, the current caps are fixed already in the operational guidelines, and I think that was done already some 15 years ago. Sorry, I need my glasses. At the beginning of Decision 24, which I assume was about 15 years ago, because at that stage, the committee decided itself to limit the number of nominations to be examined to 2, and the annual limit on the number of nominations it would review to 45. That being the case, this would simply be to change the number that has already been determined to be capable of being fixed by the World Heritage Convention. obviously the convention has a number of different responsibilities. It's not simply inscription, it's also the development of suitable management plans and state of conservation and protection. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I give the floor to the Secretariat to answer. Mr. Rao.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Finland asked the question about the cost implication of supporting the work of a working group, ad hoc working group, which was established under the chairpersonship of Germany last year. Now, this was understood in the decision itself that the working group will be convened by Germany. So all the direct costs were taken over by Germany. They had the meetings, they convened the meetings, they had the meetings in their premises, they offered tea and coffee and snacks at times. And Secretariat, of course, was asked to support it. And we did have to generate a considerable amount of information by analyzing some of the budgetary matters and some of the nomination kind of information. But that is our job as the Secretariat. We support the work of the committee, and therefore we had to do it. So we would not take it as a cost, but of course it's an additional workload. The advisory bodies also had to participate in the meetings from time to time, and so they would have also had cost implications in terms of the staff time that they devoted to the work of the ad hoc working group. So in short, yes, staff time was involved, but no direct costs from the Secretariat.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Finland again. Please, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry, but, and thank you, Director Rao, for this explanation. Now, the suggestion that has made in this session is about an open-ended working group, which would include, in my understanding, it's open to each and every state party. So far, I haven't heard anyone taking such a responsibility that Germany took this year. And it's also about, it's a different kind of setting, and nobody has been volunteered to contribute this. So the question is still there, what kind of implication this would have to the budget if we would follow the suggestion made here in this session.
Mr. Rao.
Thank you, Ambassador. Indeed, that's why I did not address that question and sort of gave the experience of the previous year when Germany took on the responsibility. It depends on the decision that you adopt. And at some point, I think the distinguished ambassador of India did suggest that perhaps Turkey could take on this responsibility. But of course, that offer still needs to be made. And when you adopt the decision on the ad hoc working group, you would have to say precisely how this would meet. But it is clear that the Secretariat will not be able to host such an ad hoc working group at UNESCO premises, because if we do so, we'll have to provide interpretation in 2 languages, which will have a cost implication, and without any budgetary support, we won't be able to do it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Maybe Turkey. Yeah. Pardon? Now it's Mr. Tabe.
Thank you. I would like first to thank all state parties that commended the work of our working group and my chairmanship. I would like shortly to comment on 3 issues. The first issue is that our working group grouped 40 to 60 state parties that worked during 2 full days, 16.5 hours. There are some state parties that are proposing to create an inter-session open-ended working group, saying that it will cover a greater spectrum of state parties and observers. I would like just to recall that the working group that was, ad hoc working group that was hosted by Germany was composed only of 2 representatives per state party, which means per region. 2 representatives per region, which means a dozen of state parties. It has at all no greater spectrum than our working group. Now, if we want to create a working group if the proposal is to create a working group that has a greater spectrum than the 40 to 60 state parties that participated in our working group, and that will work more than 2 full days because it will have to be more efficient than our working group, in that case, what would be the case? What would be the cost? This is a question to the Secretariat, and who will bear this cost? What I am afraid is that we will end up with a working group that will be composed of several big state parties, and the small state parties in the convention will not be able to participate. And we will have a working group that will be composed of a dozen or a little bit more of state parties, and the 191 state parties in the convention will not be able to participate in this working group. The second idea is that I support totally what the distinguished delegate of Peru and of Senegal worked about the necessity of having an in-depth reflection on the convention, on the concept of outstanding universal value, on the concept of authenticity, on the concept of integrity, etc., etc., etc. These concepts have been created in 1972, and the world has changed. However, I don't think this could be done neither in 1 year nor in 2 years. I think this should be a long process, and you know that the operation guidelines are revised every 4 years. So probably this may be done after a period of 4 years of discussions, experts meeting, etc., etc., etc. And in the next revision, which means in 2019, we will be able maybe to create this big change in the operation guidelines. The third issue is Article 61. Allow me to recall my memory. You know, state parties in the convention change, in the committee change, representatives of state party change. It happens that I am here since 2001, and I have some memories. This question of the number of, limiting the number of dossiers to be presented per state party and in general, the cap, was raised since Kearns, the end of the 90s. When this issue was raised, it was not for financial reasons. UNESCO had money, and the committee had money. It was basically for a question of equity among state parties and representativity of the list. When we discussed of this issue in our committee, in the Operation Guidelines Committee, we did not discuss at all financial issues. We discussed only the question of the representativity of the list and the reduction of disequilibrium in the list. What was done in Kearns and Suzhou some years after, and I had the honor to chair the working group in Suzhou working about this issue. What was done in Suzhou, in Kearns we limited the number of nominations per state party to 1 per year, and in Suzhou we decided to have them 2 per year with a limit of 45. We decided to put them on 2 per year for one reason, because we wanted to give more chance for natural sites. It was 1 cultural and 1 natural site, because natural sites were underrepresented in the list. Okay. Since Suzhou, what do we see? We see that the imbalance in the list among regions and cultures has been deepened. A dozen of state parties, always the same, have the capability of presenting 2 sites per year. Other state parties do not have this capability. And the state parties who have the capability of presenting 2 sites per year are the state parties that are most represented in the list. This was the reason of our proposal. The reason of our proposal was only to try to a little bit, not deepen the disequilibrium, and try to stop a little bit this growing disequilibrium between a dozen of state parties that are able to raise the number of nominations and inscribed sites in their country, while other state parties are not capable of doing this. When we took this decision in Cairns and in Suzhou, everybody decided to go beyond their national egoism and try really to work in order to create an equilibrium in the convention. And nobody said, well, the spirit of the convention is to inscribe, etc., is to let all. No, the idea was a collective responsibility. Thank you, Mrs. President. That's all what I should say.
Thank you, Mr. Tabet. Ich würde jetzt gerne zurückkommen auf den Punkt Einrichtung einer Arbeitsgruppe. Ja, und ich orientiere mich an dem von Indien und von vielen unterstützten Vorschlag, aber ich glaube, dass die Fragen zur ob es eine Open-Ended Working Group sein soll oder ob wir die Working Groups so konstruieren, dass wir sagen, wie bei der Ad-Hoc Working Group 2 pro Region, ist eine Frage, die noch einmal betrachtet werden sollte. Ich würde Ihnen gerne vorschlagen, nach all dem, was wir jetzt gehört haben, dass wir eine solche Working Group doch eher konzentriert durchführen. Ich sage das vor den Erfahrungen, die ich gemacht habe mit der Ad-Hoc Working Group und die auch während dieser Komiteesitzung jetzt gesammelt worden sind mit der offenen Working Group, wo sich jeder einschließen konnte. Wenn Sie 2 je Region haben und Sie haben vorher innerhalb der Regionen das besprochen, dann glaube ich, lässt sich stringenter arbeiten. Und ich würde Indien noch mal bitten, dazu Stellung zu nehmen. Das Zweite, was wir überlegen müssten, wäre, dass das Land, was bereit ist, den Vorsitz zu übernehmen, sei es die Türkei, auch erklärt, so wie wir es getan haben von deutscher Seite, dass man bereit ist, die Organisation und damit ein Stück der Kosten zu übernehmen. Ich glaube, das wäre schon wichtig. Und der dritte Punkt ist natürlich der Inhalt dieser Arbeitsgruppe. Ich habe jetzt den Eindruck, dass die Konzentration auf den Paragraph 61, das ist, was gewünscht ist. Und ich glaube, das erfordert auch schon genug Kraft. Desto mehr Aufgaben man in die Arbeitsgruppe hinein verlagert, desto schwieriger würde es. Ich würde empfehlen, sich zu konzentrieren auf 61. Und ich habe sehr wohl verstanden, dass damit 61 insgesamt gemeint ist, weil es zwischen den einzelnen Abschnitten Zusammenhänge gibt. Was man sicherlich dort auch noch diskutieren könnte, um das Problem etwas abzumildern, aber nicht aufzulösen, wäre eine Frage, wie kann man Ressourcen mobilisieren, aber ich glaube, der Kern ist der 61. Und jetzt würde ich gern Indien dazu noch einmal das Wort geben, weil Sie den Vorschlag gemacht haben und ich den Eindruck hatte, dass hier durchaus Resonanz ist. Bitte, Indien.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for giving the floor to me. In response to all the points you raised, let me do some thinking out of the box. And I hope that we might find a solution thus. The financial issue, very rightly raised by Finland, and of course the substantive issue, which is, I fully agree with you, it's paragraph 61. Here is what I think. As far as the substance is concerned, I agree with you. Perhaps this group can focus on paragraph 61, and perhaps if there are a few sundry issues which can be quickly identified. There won't be many. As far as meeting, because I think meeting is associated with costs, Cannot we do like this? When we go back in Paris, we have already existing mechanisms of regional groups. Now, the regional groups meet anyway, once a month, and there is no cost to that. There is no additional cost to that. That cost is anyway there. Now, if all the regional groups, through their respective chairs, discuss this matter within their groups, and after 1, 2, 3, whatever number of meetings, bring it to a head under the chairmanship. Turkey will forgive me for suggesting that it should be brought to a head under the chairmanship of Turkey at a time perhaps in November when the General Conference takes place, and when anyway the extraordinary session of the World Heritage Committee, I'm told, is scheduled to take place. Mr. Rao will surely correct me on this. Perhaps we might find a resolution in November itself and then bring that to the committee next year in June. So this is how we tackle the question of costs. We do it through the existing mechanism of regional groups, and then the chairs of those groups eventually bring this to the notice of the chair, which perhaps could be Turkey, and then through one meeting on the margins of the General Conference, we attempt to resolve it, because the regional groups will all have their positions, and maybe a couple of meetings. I'm being very optimistic, but one has to be optimistic, and you can resolve this issue. And the focus, as the chair rightly says, to my mind, should be paragraph 61, maybe a couple of sundry issues which could be quickly identified, and I see this matter being resolved through this mechanism. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And now Mr. Rao.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I'm not commenting on the regional group consultation process that the distinguished ambassador of India has outlined. I wish to point out that it's not necessary to discuss it on the sidelines of the General Conference, but as you know, the General Assembly will be meeting. General Assembly of States Parties of the Convention will be meeting from 18 to 21 of November. Primarily, of course, to elect members to the World Heritage Committee, but this could certainly be an agenda item there, where you could take the results of your regional group consultation to the General Assembly. I would not recommend that you take it to an extraordinary session, because the extraordinary session will be convened only with the limited purpose of perhaps electing the vice chair from Senegal, and maybe the chairperson or the rapporteur, depending on how you deal with item 17 tomorrow. So the suggestion, Madam Chairperson, is the General Assembly could certainly be the broader forum where all 191 states parties come together to have this broader consultation on whatever recommendations you may come up with on paragraph 61. Thank you.
Das heißt doch, wir sind jetzt ein Stück weitergekommen. Ja, ich halte einmal fest, und das sind sozusagen Eckpunkte, und ich würde dann aber auch bitten, dass das Land, was den Vorschlag gemacht hat, vielleicht unter Einbeziehung anderer, die diesen Vorschlag auch unterstützt haben, aber auch unter Berücksichtigung der Bedenken, die geäußert worden sind, einen konkreten Vorschlag uns übermittelt. Als Eckpunkte sehe ich jetzt an, wir würden eine Arbeitsgruppe einrichten. Diese Arbeitsgruppe wäre unter Berücksichtigung der Vorschläge der Regionalgruppen zusammengesetzt, und zwar damit nicht eine Open-Ended Working Group, sondern von der Zahl schon beschränkt. Dann würde die Plattform der General Assembly genutzt, um mit allen sich auszutauschen über die Vorschläge, die bis dahin erarbeitet sind. Und bei dem Vorsitz ist zu klären, ob diese Bereitschaft da ist, auch die Organisation zu übernehmen. Und ich bin mir sicher, dass sich dieses regeln lässt. Da habe ich Optimismus. Ja, und ich denke, wichtig wäre die Konzentration jetzt, dass wir sagen, wir fokussieren auf Paragraph 61. Wenn sich herausstellen sollte jetzt im Laufe der Diskussion, es gibt noch einige wenige dringende Punkte, dann sollten wir das festhalten, aber zunächst einmal würde ich 61 sagen. Darf ich jetzt Indien fragen, ob Sie uns dazu etwas Konkretes übermitteln könnten?
Madam Chair, this was an out-of-box proposal. I thought of it at the spur of the moment because there are clear problems associated with finance based on what the World Heritage Center mentioned, that they would perhaps not have the flexibility to convene regular meetings. I do believe it can be given a go. The substance of it could be paragraph 61 and one or two sundry issues. And if the chairs of the respective regional groups manage to get solutions, and we discuss it in the General Assembly as the World Heritage Center has confirmed, who knows, we might get a decision. I think this is perhaps one way to proceed. Perhaps Turkey might wish to come in at this stage and confirm what this might, how things might shape up, and of course other committee members, this is now open to discussion. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Then I would open the floor again, and Turkey has the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, our response to multiple questions whether Turkey would be willing to take up what Germany has generously offered. I think I have not been to one of the meetings except for the later sessions where we were invited by the courtesy of the chair. I think we can deliver what Germany has delivered. Now that there seems to be a quorum that the number is not going to grow, we should not, of course, defer. If there is a state party who has not been member of the ad hoc working group wants to join, we should just be flexible on this. We're not performing a tribunal's job here. We're trying to be constructive for our organization. So if it's a matter of tea and coffee, we may not be able to match German courtesy, but we will do our best. And the Secretariat has clearly indicated that there would not be additional budgetary constraints or burdens on this. If the number increases the space that we can offer, or exceeds the space we can offer, there are rooms available in the Secretariat which can accommodate. We will discuss with the Secretariat that whatever possibilities can be explored. But if Turkey is decided as the next host, it will be my privilege to do our utmost. I also think that the mandate of the group will be far less, the workload will be far less than the ad hoc working group, because the overwhelming majority of the issues have been actually resolved and they will be decided and finalized. And I fully endorse your proposal, Madam Chairperson, that the creative issues, creative thinking should not be restricted if the ad hoc group. Let us extend the ad hoc working group, and if there is creative thinking and additional proposals, the group should have the discretion to present them to the committee. If the committee takes them up, that's fine. If the committee is not interested, that's also fine. Thank you.
Mr. Rao.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. Just a point of further clarification to what I said previously. I had meant that the General Assembly of States Parties would provide the forum for broader consultation with all 191 States Parties to the convention, but that doesn't mean that they will be able to take a decision, because these are changes to the operational guidelines which only the committee can decide upon. So you have your ad hoc working group with whatever composition you may decide. You may decide to extend the mandate of the current ad hoc working group with the option for other states parties to come into different meetings and attend different meetings of this ad hoc working group. Then the results of that ad hoc working group could be taken to the General Assembly of States Parties in November for broader consultation, and then the recommendations could be finalized for presentation to the 40th session next year in 2016. That could be a process that you may wish to consider, Madam Chairperson. And on the point that the distinguished ambassador of Turkey raised about rooms available in Secretariat, the problem is when the Secretariat participates or organizes meetings in the Secretariat, in the UNESCO headquarters, we are required to provide interpretation in 2 languages, and that has an additional cost. It would have to be something that is done purely at your initiative and organized and handled by the delegation, whichever delegation offers to chair that process. Thank you, Madam Chairperson.
So, also, ich glaube, wir konnten ein bisschen was klären. Ich sehe nochmal Turkey.
I would be grateful if German delegation could inform us what kind of expenses they had to undertake or provide. Did they have to pay anything to Secretariat during the ad hoc working group? I would suggest that we stick to that experience, and the Secretariat will honor us when we reach a point where we need Secretariat's participation and guidance.
Also ich glaube, ich kann die Türkei beruhigen, das ist machbar, und ich denke, das ist auch für Sie machbar. Ja, also ich bin auch sicher, Sie haben Räume in Ihrer Botschaft, das hatten wir auch. Also das sind praktische Dinge, die lassen sich klären. Ja, ja. So, jetzt habe ich noch mal Indien. Please.
Madam Chair, I feel obliged to take the floor simply to very, very quickly state that I fully support the Turkish proposal. I think the Turkish ambassador is being extremely generous, and he has taken on the responsibility. We had some doubts who could do this. He has offered to replicate what perhaps Germany did last year, and I think we should support him. I think we should simply support him. They are going to be the chair. There are some contentious issues. We all agree they have to be sorted out. The Secretariat says it cannot take the cost. What then can we do? This is a solution, and we have to find a solution. He's offered a solution, and he has said he can host. He'll try and make it as open-ended as possible. He is willing to look at paragraph 61. He's willing even to go beyond paragraph 61. What more can he say? And what more can the committee do but to agree with him? Let's give this a chance, and let's go forward and onward, and let's try and find solutions. We are here to find solutions. So I give him my wholehearted support, and I wonder if other colleagues would wish to chip in at this stage. Thank you.
Jetzt sind wir an einem Punkt, wo wir konkreter werden können, und ich möchte sehr herzlich danken allen, die jetzt auch solche sehr konkreten Vorschläge gemacht haben. Wir sind jetzt an dem Punkt, dass wir sagen können, die Türkei wäre bereit, den Vorsitz zu machen mit all dem, was zusammenhängt. Und ich kann nur sagen, unsere Erfahrungen waren gute. Und ich hätte dann gerne eine Resonanz aus diesem Kreis der Komiteemitglieder, ob Sie das auch so sehen. Und das Zweite wäre nochmal eine Resonanzkonzentration auf Paragraph 61. Wenn notwendig, dann auch noch weitere Fragen, aber sehr konzentriert. Und wir haben sozusagen einen zweistufigen Prozess jetzt, dass man hinarbeitet zum Zeitpunkt der General Assembly, dort das breitere Forum nutzt und dann weitergeht, die Vorlage zu konkretisieren für die nächste Sitzung des Welterbekomitees. Das klingt mir doch alles sehr vernünftig. Und jetzt bin ich gespannt auf alle Wortmeldungen, denn einige haben schon länger sich gemeldet und die Liste ist lang. Und ich frage jetzt jeden, der sich bisher gemeldet hat, nach diesen Punkten und bitte sich darauf zu konzentrieren. Ich lese vor: Senegal, then Malaysia, Vietnam, Colombia, Portugal, Serbia, Peru, Philippines. Yeah? And I start now with Senegal. You have the floor to this concrete proposal.
Bien, merci Madame la Présidente. Je vais essayer d'être bref. À l'entame de mon propos, j'avais dit qu'on avait un très large consensus et non une unanimité. Ça voulait dire qu'on prenait acte que tout le monde n'était pas d'accord, mais maintenant, les choses ont beaucoup évolué. Et personnellement, je pense que même si on doit avoir un groupe de travail quelque part, on ne devrait pas rater l'occasion que va construire l'Assemblée générale des États partis pour quand même discuter plus démocratiquement de cette question-là. Parce qu'un groupe de travail, il sera toujours restreint, quelle que soit la volonté de nos amis de la Turquie. Donc, nous pensons que l'Assemblée générale est une bonne tribune pour discuter de ces questions. Deuxièmement, nous pensons qu'au niveau de la compensation, il y a presque un problème éthique. On est volontaire pour aller servir dans le comité, on y va. Mais le comité n'est pas un livret A, où on doit faire des placements qu'on va récolter à la sortie. Je pense qu'il faudrait entre nous qu'on puisse quand même dévoiler les jeux. Si on doit faire des placements pour aller au comité, mais restez dehors. Laissez ceux qui sont prêts à y aller sans rien demander en compensation y aller. Je pense que c'est la plus mauvaise façon de servir la Convention. Dans ce cas, maintenons la situation actuelle, que les gens soient là-bas. Parce que si on estime qu'être dans le comité est suspect quand on a un dossier à défendre, qu'il y a un conflit d'intérêts, ben, soit on enlève ce conflit d'intérêts, soit on le maintient. Mais vraiment, donner des jetons de présence à ceux qui sont dans le comité pour leur permettre d'être prioritaires après, c'est créer pour la première fois une prise de participation, une prise d'action dans les nominations, et nous ne pensons pas que ce soit une très bonne chose pour notre convention. Merci.
Thank you. Now,
oui, juste un dernier mot, Madame la Présidente. Nous pensons dans tous les cas que si des commissions devraient être mises en place, ad hoc ou autres, qu'on ferait les efforts qu'il faut pour que les deux langues de la Convention puissent s'exprimer.
Thank you. Now, Malaysia.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Initially, when we asked for the floor, we wanted to support India that we should look the Para 61 on its entirety, not piecemeal. But after listening to your proposal and the intervention made by India and the willingness of Turkey to undertake to chair the working group, we support both India and Turkey. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Vietnam.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My delegation attend this meeting with great pleasure and try to do some mediation work. Given the debate and the discussion, we would like to make a proposal, but we are not certain that this time it will be succeed as previously. But still, we try to come up with a proposal. What I suggest is that we will adopt the draft decision, taking off paragraph 61 as requested by India. Vietnam make amendment 5 point to encourage the state party to present one nomination per year from 2017. This amendment from Vietnam just encourage, just in order to take the account of the discussions at the moment, which has nothing to do with the changing of the operation guidelines, which is binding. So the amendment of Vietnam is just to encourage. You may take it, you may not take it. But anyway, that will reflect a sentiment of the House, and that we try to make a step forward. So we will come up with that amendment. I think that, I hope that you will not against that, because this is just to encourage, and that also reflect the mood of everybody in order to come to a greater more representative and balanced list of the heritage. And the second amendment is that we also encourage the open-ended working group to address the paragraph 61 of the operation guidelines at the next session of the General Assembly, taking into account the decision on the matter by the regional group consultation as suggested by India. So I think with that we can leave the debate of this item with everybody a little bit happy. No one is losing face. So this is the amendment of Vietnam. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now Colombia has the floor.
Gracias, Presidenta. Hemos pedido la palabra realmente hace un tiempo atrás y dado el desenlace del último debate, ya en este momento quiero aprovechar la palabra para agradecer al embajador de Turquía por el apoyo para continuar con las consultas que analiza el grupo de trabajo y resaltando la importancia de motivar la participación también de los países observadores. Gracias.
Now, Portugal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We would like to support what has been said here. In fact, we were prepared to accept paragraph 61 as it is, but since there is no consensus, we do agree with India, so this to the creation of this working group, and we also commend Turkey for proposing the organization of this working group and for trying to reach a consensus regarding this matter. Now, this has led us to read thoroughly and better what has been proposed in paragraph 61, especially what regards on point 6.9. And in fact, maybe this point is displaced here because it doesn't have to do with the number of nominations. So what we propose is that this small paragraph should go to somewhere else where it has to do with the state parties deciding on a voluntary basis to suspend the presentation of new nominations. This is the issue that is on the table. So we propose that another point is added to paragraph 59, which would read, I don't know if I should say now what we propose or later, but well, we propose that it would read like this. State parties are requested to consider whether their heritage is already well represented on the list, and if so, to slow down their rate of submission to further nomination by, and then you have the points. Point D, deciding on a voluntary basis to suspend the presentation of new nominations, which is here already. And then you would have a point E, by taking into account that to state parties, former members of the committee who accepted on a voluntary basis not to have a nomination reviewed by the committee during their mandate, a priority will be applied for 4 years after the end of their mandate on the committee. Well, this is just a suggestion, but the text could be revised. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Herzlichen Dank. Aber ich darf jetzt daran erinnern, wenn wir hier uns einigen auf eine Arbeitsgruppe zu 61, dann wäre dieses Gegenstand der Beratungen dieser Arbeitsgruppe zu 61. Jetzt rufe ich Peru auf. Peru, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señora presidenta. Creo que su buena conducción nos está llevando a un consenso sobre qué hacer con el 61. Quisiera agradecer a la embajadora de la India por haber dado respuesta a su consulta, precisando su propuesta respecto del mandato del grupo ad hoc interseccional, que sería pues sobre la integralidad del párrafo 61 y algunas cuestiones conexas. Esto último es muy importante también para dar cabida a la preocupación del embajador de Turquía en el sentido de no constreñir de manera extrema al grupo y dejar que pueda hacer propuestas que finalmente el comité decidirá si las acepta o no. El mandato entonces del grupo sería la integralidad del párrafo 61 más algunas cuestiones conexas. En segundo lugar, creo que también ya se ha resuelto, tenemos un consenso gracias al ofrecimiento de Turquía de escucharnos, hacer ejercicio de la presidencia del futuro grupo ad hoc interseccional y encargarse, pues, como lo hizo Alemania, de todos los aspectos operativos de convocatoria y de orientación del grupo. Por supuesto, todas las delegaciones, desde ya agradecemos a Turquía y le expresamos nuestra voluntad de cooperar de manera permanente con esta tarea. En tercer lugar, señora presidenta, creo que también podría haber un consenso en la sala de introducir en el trabajo del grupo ad hoc la instancia propuesta por la India de las consultas regionales. Esto a mí me parece extremadamente útil. Si vamos a trabajar solamente a nivel del grupo ad hoc, ¿no?, las posiciones del resto de países miembros del comité van a tardar en expresarse y eso va a complicar de alguna manera el trabajo. Es mejor que los representantes en el grupo ad hoc tengan una vinculación permanente con sus regiones y las regiones puedan adoptar posiciones que se procesen en el grupo de trabajo. Con estos elementos, señora presidenta, creo que podríamos configurar un consenso. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much. And now Philippines and then Algeria.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. Much in the spirit of the distinguished delegates of Vietnam and Peru, our delegation has concrete suggestions to move forward based around 3 elements. First, Madam Chairperson, I think we can all agree to take out paragraph 61 from paragraph 4 in the draft decision 39-11. And I think this is one element that we have all reached a strong consensus and agreement on. Secondly, with regard to an open-ended nature of consultations and the possibility that the General Assembly provides, we would suggest including in 39-11 a paragraph that would read something like this: decides to recommend to the General Assembly of States Parties to include discussion of suggested amendments to paragraph 61 on its agenda, taking into account consultations within regional groups. So this is the second element, Madam Chair, that takes care of the open-ended and inputs from the regions. And the third element, Madam Chair, would be extension of the mandate of the ad hoc working group, which I think should be addressed under 39-13A, a draft decision later in our agenda, since that talks about the ad hoc working group. And we have a concrete suggestion. I don't know if now is the pertinent time, but this would be limiting the mandate of the ad hoc working group to paragraph 61, as well as sustainability of the World Heritage Fund, and it would follow the same language as the decision from last year in Doha, which created the ad hoc working group that you so ably chaired, Madam Chairperson. So I see these 3 elements providing the basis of moving forward, and where we can really all agree and take this issue to decisions. Thank you.
Wir nähern uns einem solchen Beschluss. Dankeschön. Und jetzt kommt Algerien. Alger, ja.
Madame la Présidente, la délégation algérienne souscrit à la proposition de l'Inde et à l'acceptation généreuse de la Turquie pour la constitution de ce groupe de travail ad hoc qui doit approfondir les contenus du dispositif de l'article du paragraphe 61. Et je souhaiterais, Madame la Présidente, avoir confirmation qu'il ne s'agit que de l'approfondissement de cette disposition 61. Et je souhaiterais également avoir des précisions sur la nature de ce groupe de travail. Est-ce qu'un groupe de travail ad hoc, tel qu'il a été mis en place et que vous avez eu l'honneur de présider pour les méthodes de travail d'évaluation, ou bien c'est un groupe de travail élargi et ouvert? Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you. And now Turkey, and then Croatia, and then maybe we have a suggestion.
Thank you,
Please.
Madam Chairperson. Semantically, I think resolution 39-11 Rev, when we remove para 61 from item 4, I think we will have to insert para 61 into item 9 just before paragraph 68. So item 9 will have to read on that case, decides on an exceptional basis to re-examine paras 61 and 69 as well as Annex 2A at its 40th session in 2016. And then we fully support Philippines' proposal to insert a new paragraph 11 to 13A, 39(13)A. If the committee so decides, we will do our best. But it should be just to extend the current ad hoc working group. The German chair will pass to Turkey, and then we will be flexible to accommodate additional participants who would like to come and express their views and proposals.
Also ich will schon einmal gegenüber der Türkei sagen, dass ich mich sehr freue über diese Bereitschaft und ich signalisiere allen auch, dass wir ihnen auch gleich bei Item 11 dazu einen Vorschlag bringen werden. Denn wenn ich auf die Uhr gucke, dann ist jetzt auch die Zeit reif nach sehr intensiver Diskussion. Es ist nicht so sehr die Dauer der Diskussion, sondern dass wir uns in der Tat jetzt weit angenähert haben. Und, und wir könnten dann auch die einzelnen Paragraphen von 39,11 Ref durchgehen und dann auch das entsprechend annehmen. Jetzt würde ich noch gerne die Wortmeldung hören von Korea und dann schlage ich Ihnen vor, sollten wir Paragraph bei Paragraph durchgehen und einen ergänzenden Paragraphen machen, der in Fortsetzung der Ad-hoc-Working Group, die etabliert worden ist bei der letzten Komiteesitzung, das hier verankern, aber mit Bezug auf Paragraph 61. Korea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We would like to go with the consensus of the committee, and we thank the Ambassador of India for his suggestion to discuss in both arenas of the regional groups and the next coming up to GA, as was suggested by Mr. Rao, and we are willing to agree to it. And also, we would like to thank the generous offer of the Ambassador of Turkey to host a working group. And we would also like to participate in this working group to contribute to the discussions in the future. We also fully agree with the suggestions of the Philippines, taking into account the addition of paragraph 61, number 61 into para 9, as suggested by the Ambassador of Turkey. Thank you.
Herzlichen Dank. Wir werden uns jetzt mit Item 11 befassen und meine Bitte wäre, dass wir den Vorschlag dazu auf dem Screen sehen. Können wir? So, jetzt schauen wir doch mal von Anfang an. Von Anfang an, from the very beginning. Ja. So, und dann gehen wir Paragraph für Paragraph durch. Ich komme zu Paragraph 1, das dürfte unproblematisch sein. Ja, muss ich jetzt? Ja? Ja. Hm?
The two has to be replaced by the others.
Pardon?
The two. The three.
Just number one. Ja. Also Paragraph 1 ist soweit angenommen. Dann komme ich zu 2, das ist auch angenommen. 3 in Ordnung. Und bei 4 haben wir eine Veränderung. Stimmen alle damit überein? Ja. Dann nehmen wir bei 4 die 61 heraus. Was ist mit 115? War da noch eine Frage? 115 ebenfalls? Ja? Nein? Ohne 115? 115 bleibt drin? Mit 115, nicht? Ja. Also 61 entfällt hier. Und was noch? Ja, it's deleted, ja. Alright, dann können wir 4 so annehmen. Ja, okay. Dann komme ich zu 4 bis. Bitte das alle nochmal durchzulesen. Decided to extend the mandate. The rapporteur. Fine. Please, Mr. Rapporteur.
Bis. Paragraphe 4 bis. Le comité du patrimoine mondial décide de prolonger le mandat du groupe de travail ad hoc établi lors de la 38e session à Doha à l'invitation de la Turquie afin de débattre davantage et faire des recommandations sur le paragraphe 61 et tout autre paragraphe si nécessaire. Le paragraphe 4 ter. Le comité décide également de suggérer que la 20e Assemblée générale des États parties, en novembre 2015, débatte des recommandations du groupe de travail ad hoc afin de lui permettre de soumettre ses recommandations finales lors de la 40e session en 2016 pour décision. Le paragraphe 5, par le Vietnam, le comité encourage les États parties à présenter à partir de 2017 une proposition d'inscription par an et encourage également le groupe de travail ouvert à traiter la question du paragraphe 61 des orientations à la prochaine session de l'Assemblée générale des États parties en tenant compte de la décision prise à ce sujet lors de la concertation des groupes régionaux.
No. One by one. We said one by one. India?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Very quickly, we are okay with paragraph 4 bis and paragraph 4 ter, but number 5, regretfully, I think this goes against the spirit of the group that is proposed to be set up and against the principle that we should discuss the matter in its entirety. So we are okay with 4 bis and ter. And then we are okay to, with the Turkish suggestion accepted by many others, that 61, para 61, should form a new para 9 and be para 61 and 68 as well as Annex 2A. I hope I'm making sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Philippines?
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. Similar to the distinguished ambassador of India, we could work with 4 bis and 4 ter, and just to maybe further clarify the language in a 4 bis, we should say that to further discuss and make recommendations on paragraph 6 and other paragraphs as may be necessary, as well as sustainability of the World Heritage Fund, and to report to the 40th session of the committee.
Just to clarify that the reference to the 40th session is in the next paragraph, 4 ter, after consultations at the General Assembly.
Philippines?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I wish to thank Director Rao for the clarification. We see that. Then just to add the sustainability of the World Heritage Fund, and perhaps in 4 ter, it's not only the recommendations of the ad hoc working group, but specifically suggested amendments to paragraph 61, because the ad hoc working group may not have met yet since the election of states parties. New committee members would only take place in November. So perhaps in 4 ter to include, to discuss the suggested amendments to paragraph 61.
Yeah. Could you agree with that?
Did you ask me, Madam Chair?
Yeah.
No, we're fine. I was happy with what I had proposed, but if Philippines wants to further modify that for clarity, I have absolutely no problems.
Yeah, fine. Finland?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
we do have listened carefully about the interest of others to delete the 61 of the decision, and we can of course always join the emerging consensus. That's what the whole convention and the committee is for. But we should, again, let's say, we should really appreciate and take into account the work that was accomplished of the ad hoc working group. Now, we would like to have a very precise mandate for this working group. And as it now stands, the 4 bis, it's getting broader and broader, and we do see problems in that. And we would prepare of ending the paragraph after 61 and deleting the rest of that. And we thank the distinguished delegate of Vietnam for creativeness and good spirit, and we can support the paragraph 5 suggested by Vietnam. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Germany? Or Turkey? Turkey first and then Germany. Turkey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Philippines proposal is fine with us. So 4 bis and 4 ter as proposed by India and Philippines, and 61 relocated from 4 to paragraph 9. And Turkey will make sure that after the new member state parties join the committee, until the forthcoming 40th session, they will be briefed and included in the process of consultations of the extended ad hoc group.
Thank you. Now Germany, and then Qatar, Jamaica, and Serbia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are going along with the proposal brought forward by Finland.
Thank you. Now Qatar.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. J'ai une proposition, je ne sais pas ce qu'elle vaut exactement, mais je me suis dit je vais quand même la dire dans la salle. Pour que ce comité, ce groupe de travail représente tous les pays signataires de la Convention, est-ce qu'il n'est pas possible d'envisager qu'il y ait un membre du comité représentatif de groupe électoral et un autre membre, un autre représentant qui ne soit pas membre du comité, pour que, comme ça, tous les États partis soient représentés pour qu'il y ait plus de richesse dans le débat. Je ne sais pas ce que vaut cette idée, mais je voulais juste vous la présenter. Merci.
Thank you. Now, Jamaica, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not to prolong the issue, I know we've been at this for quite a while, but if we could go back to the proposal made by the Philippines, we fully support it, because we feel that this addition and any other paragraphs as may be necessary is critical, because it is going to support, as India had referred to earlier, any sundry issues that may be there to be addressed. You don't want to close this without giving yourself some latitude to have these things addressed. And I felt that the proposal from the Philippines certainly supported that. So we are fully proposing that that be given consideration again. Thank you.
Now Serbia.
I would also like to support the Philippine proposal. Especially for us, the sustainability of the World Heritage Fund is an extremely important issue. So I would like to see it also discussed within this ad hoc working group. Thank you.
Thank you. Japan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to go along with what has been said by the Finland colleague, that is not to open too much, but as Madam Chair suggested, we will go through the other draft decisions and what may be necessary after the discussions of the draft decisions that could go into this vehicle of the working group. That is to say, for example, I mentioned Rule 22.7. If there isn't any consensus found when we discuss 5E, then we could bring this into the vehicle of this working group. Thank you.
Thank you. Senegal.
Oui, Madame la Présidente, bon, nous souhaitons aussi qu'on arrive rapidement à un consensus, mais nous pensons quand même qu'il ne faut pas rendre le débat exclusif sur le paragraphe 61. Merci.
Thank you. Now Colombia and then Korea.
Gracias, Presidenta. Queremos apoyar la propuesta de Filipinas dándole una prioridad al punto 61 innegablemente, pero será una oportunidad de dar debate a otras profundidades que no han sido discutidas. Gracias.
Thank you. And now Korea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are for discussions of other sundry issues as well, but could we just make recommendations on paragraph 61 only, because we are going to review the operational guidelines every 4 years, and if we include all these other issues into on an exceptional basis, I think we would be expanding the mandate of the ad hoc working group to a greater extent than we originally anticipated. So we would like the opportunity to have the discussion, but only to have recommendations specifically on paragraph 61 from this ad hoc working group. Thank you.
It's a difficult situation now, I see it. I have now Algeria and then Portugal and Poland. Algeria.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Ce 4 bis est très important pour déterminer les termes de référence du groupe de travail. Si nous décidons que ce soit le paragraphe 61, le groupe de travail se penchera sur le paragraphe 61 uniquement. J'ai bien entendu tout à l'heure que certains voulaient discuter du paragraphe 68, du paragraphe 115. Et d'autres veulent élargir à l'ensemble de la modification des orientations. Allons-nous refaire un débat comme les 16 heures qu'ont passé tous ceux qui ont discuté sur les questions de modification? Je propose, Madame la Présidente, et avec votre permission, que nous nous prononcions sur ce qui doit être modifié. Est-ce qu'il y a consensus sur le reste? Est-ce qu'il n'y en a pas? Et s'il n'y en a pas, sur quel point il n'y en a pas? Et on décidera des termes de référence de ce groupe. Parce que sinon, on va encore rééditer le groupe de travail qui s'est penché pendant 16 heures ici lors de cette session. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Ich nehme jetzt noch 2 Wortmeldungen und glaube, dass Algerien einen klugen Vorschlag gemacht hat, genauso wie Japan zuvor, dass wir die anderen Paragraphen durchgehen, sehen, ob noch etwas übrig bleibt, was in dieser Working Group konkret behandelt werden sollte, um das zu benennen und dann hier mit einzufügen, sodass wir nicht ein völlig offenes Feld haben. Das heißt, wir würden nach diesen beiden Wortmeldungen, die ich jetzt noch habe, Polen und Portugal, die anderen Paragraphen durchgehen und dann schauen, was bleibt übrig an offenen Punkten. Das war ja auch der ursprüngliche Vorschlag von Indien, wenn ich mich daran erinnere, das anzunehmen, was wir annehmen können und dann über den Rest für diese Arbeitsgruppe nachzudenken. Ich finde, das ist hilfreich. Ja, ja. Jetzt habe ich Polen und dann Portugal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We only wanted to join the Korea saying that we should be careful not opening the revision of the operational guidelines to big extent. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Portugal.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We do agree with Algeria. We just had a working group that reached consensus regarding most of the points on the operation guidelines. So it shouldn't be this working group that is going to be created that should open again those issues that have been reached consensus now. So we agree that the terms of the group should be included in this 4 bis. And we propose that just from now on, it would be on paragraph 61, and the sustainability of the World Heritage Fund, and maybe any other paragraphs related with these issues, for instance, because there may be one or other paragraphs on the operation guidelines that are related to these 2 paragraphs or these 2 points, and that they have to be revised to the working group so to make a coherent text. Thank you, Madam.
Danke. Jetzt habe ich noch Kroatien. Croatia, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just to be very brief, actually my colleague from Portugal just echoed what I wanted to say, supporting the Algerian proposal and adding any other paragraph that might not be, that still needs further discussion, and especially the World Heritage Fund. Thank you.
Danke. Damit halte ich fest. Wir stellen jetzt 4b zurück. Und ich gehe damit für 4c, further decided, Mr. Rapporteur. Yeah. Yeah.
Donc le comité décide également de suggérer que la 20e Assemblée générale des États parties en novembre 2015 débatte des recommandations du groupe de travail ad hoc afin de lui permettre de soumettre ses recommandations finales lors de la 40e session en 2016 pour décision. Paragraphe 5, proposé par le Vietnam et la Finlande. Donc le comité encourage les États parties à présenter à partir de 2017 une proposition d'inscription par an et encourage également le groupe de travail ouvert à traiter la question du paragraphe 61 des orientations à la prochaine session de l'Assemblée générale des États parties en tenant compte de la décision prise à ce sujet lors de la concertation des groupes régionaux. Is that enough? Or just I carry on?
So, nun komme ich auf 4c. Gibt es dazu Anmerkungen oder ich frage lieber so, wer hat dagegen Bedenken gegen 4c? Warte. Nein? Okay. Dann würde ich 4 so annehmen. Und dann komme ich zu 5. Da hatte ich schon ein Bedenken gehört. Ja, Indien.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. It was, I think, me who had expressed something on para 5. I personally believe that since there is now, we have agreed to the mechanism of an open working group. We have agreed to a mechanism of regional consultations and also agreed to a meeting of General Assembly of States Parties in November. Therefore, let us not pronounce already on this restriction. Let us take it in that group. That is why this group is being created. So I think this is unnecessary at this stage. Let us discuss that issue in entirety, and if this is the decision that we arrive at after the consultations, so be it. We will agree to it, but not without a consultation. And the latter part of the paragraph also, I see a repetition. I don't think that is needed now. It's understood that we are going to handle paragraph 61. Thank you.
Vor diesem Hintergrund würde ich gerne Finnland und Vietnam noch einmal fragen, ob Sie an dieser Formulierung von 5 festhalten wollen oder ob Sie nicht nach dem Argument von Indien darauf verzichten könnten. Vietnam?
Madam Chair, the position of my delegation is, I stated very clearly, we could get along with any consensus in the House. Why we propose that? Because at first I listened to the two sides, and I think that is we need to give fair considerations to the other side. So now it's to the other side if they decided to have that or not. That is just Vietnam can go along with any consensus. Vietnam is here to contribute, not to prevent the discussion. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Herzlichen Dank. Dann, wenn Indien das auch, Finnland das auch teilt? Ja, Finnland?
Yes, we consider that it was a helpful suggestion made by Vietnam, and I do want to underline, which is actually underlined there already. It's about encouraging, and we do not share in this sense the opinion of the distinguished delegate of India. Thank you.
Jetzt habe ich gehört, dass Vietnam eigentlich bereit war, das zurückzuziehen. Ich gucke Finnland jetzt ganz intensiv an. Wenn ja Vietnam diesen Punkt 5 zurückzieht, dann wäre es, glaube ich, im Sinne eines Konsens hilfreich, wenn wir uns dem nähern würden. Darf ich Sie noch einmal fragen, Finnland?
Frau Präsidentin, ich habe Ihren intensiven Blick sehr gespürt und wenn es keine anderen Meldungen gibt, dann natürlich sind wir für das Konsensus. Vielen Dank.
Ich darf Ihnen sehr, sehr herzlich dafür danken, aber ich glaube, der Dank ist von allen. Dankeschön. Damit würden wir... Ja? Also jetzt haben wir die Ziffer 5 herausgenommen und bevor ich jetzt weitergehe, bin ich auf etwas aufmerksam gemacht worden, dass weil wir jetzt sehr intensiv diskutiert haben und ich sehe die Uhr vor mir, es ist 20 nach 6, also 18:20 Uhr, wir eigentlich bis 18:30 Uhr tagen wollten. Wir haben wohl Probleme, dass wir haben überzogen heute. Ja? Wir haben jetzt 2 Varianten, würde ich sagen. Und wir müssen das jetzt entscheiden wegen der Dolmetscherinnen. Die Dolmetscherinnen wären bereit, bis 20 Uhr zu bleiben. Das hieße für uns, dass wir die Zeit heute bis 20 Uhr nutzen. Die andere Variante, Herr Rau, das frage ich jetzt einmal, aber das muss ich auch das Plenum fragen. Wir haben ja morgen einen vollen Zeitplan und ich weiß, Sie müssen morgen...
Until 3 p.m.
Until 3 p.m.
Yes.
Das wäre die Alternative, until 3 p.m. Ja? Also entweder heute bis 20 Uhr oder morgen oder beides.
I would recommend doing 8 p.m. so that we know how much we have done.
Aha.
If required, we could go to 3 p.m.
Ja. Also jetzt gehen wir in den Marathon. Der Rat ist von Herrn Rau und ich glaube, er hat sehr viel Erfahrung, wie die viele hier, dass er sagt, lassen Sie uns bis 20 Uhr heute tagen und morgen noch einmal vorsehen im Notfall bis 15 Uhr. Ja, wären Sie einverstanden, dass wir jetzt bis 20 Uhr tagen? Oder lieber alles auf morgen konzentrieren? Wir könnten natürlich auch eines machen, dass wir jetzt Item 11 fertig machen. Ja, Item 11 fertig, dann unterbrechen und morgen weitermachen. Wäre Ihnen das lieber? Die Budget Group. Ja. Ja, das ist eine gute Idee. Jetzt erweitere ich meinen Vorschlag noch. Darf ich nochmal Tagesordnung sehen? Weil das sehr zusammenhängt. Ja. Dass wir Item 11 abschließen und dann einführen in Item 15, das wäre Working Group? Ja. Das wäre der Teil, der auf die Budget Group zukommt. Ja? Mhm. Das, glaube ich, wäre jetzt ein guter Kompromiss. Ja? Dann versuchen wir das so. Dankeschön. Die Dolmetscher sind gebeten, noch etwas länger zu bleiben. Und ich gucke, wie weit wir jetzt sind. Kolumbian hat sich gemeldet.
Gracias, señora presidenta. Muy brevemente quisiera hacer una pregunta en referencia con el párrafo 4 ter, y es que no nos está quedando claro en la delegación. Por supuesto estamos de acuerdo con el consenso para que el grupo continúe, no tenemos ningún problema y es lo que también queremos, pero simplemente quisiera saber si nos pudieran clarificar qué países o cuántos países estarían integrando el grupo, porque por grupo ad hoc entendemos que evidentemente debería ser un grupo cerrado y pequeño. Para nosotros es importante que haya también oportunidad para que países observadores del comité puedan expresarse. Entonces quisiera simplemente como tener una claridad, pero repito, Colombia está obviamente a favor de que el grupo continúe su mandato. Es simplemente la claridad para saber qué países o quiénes pudieran integrarlo. Gracias.
Mr. Rao.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I thought the consensus was, and as it has been clarified in paragraph 4 bis, we are extending the mandate of the ad hoc working group which was established at Doha, which means there are 2 representatives from each of the electoral groups, and the distinguished ambassador of Turkey has clarified that any other member from any other electoral group that may wish to assist in any of the meetings of this ad hoc working group would be welcome to do so. So in a way, it is the existing ad hoc working group whose mandate is being extended with the additional proviso for others to participate as well.
Danke. Algérie.
Madame la Présidente, pour aller dans le sens de l'honorable délégué de la Colombie et de celui du Qatar qui l'a précédé, je suis d'accord avec cette proposition d'élargir le groupe ad hoc et je propose qu'on modifie le 4 bis, si on peut y revenir, comme suit. Décide de prolonger le mandat du groupe de travail ad hoc élargi à un représentant par groupe régional non membre du comité pour approfondir les contenus des paragraphes et puis on citerait éventuellement les paragraphes sur lesquels il y aurait consensus. Non.
Also, ich habe eine Bitte an Algerien. Wir haben gesagt, wir stellen jetzt den Artikel 4b zurück. Und ich würde gerne erst alles andere durchgehen. Ja. Damit wir auch Klarheit haben über den Inhalt, dann kommen wir zu 4b zurück. Das war Ihr eigener Vorschlag. Und dann können wir auch noch einmal schauen, was hier notwendig ist. Sind Sie einverstanden?
Oui, Madame la Présidente. Moi, je viens de proposer cette rédaction pour le premier membre de la phrase que nous venons de discuter là, l'élargissement du groupe ad hoc. S'il faille attendre que nous soyons d'accord sur les paragraphes à discuter, il n'y a aucun problème. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Dankeschön. Dann würde ich jetzt weitergehen. Five.
Okay, paragraph number 5. The amendment is proposed by, which is 5, please. Paragraph 5. In French. Okay. Okay, so. It's India is deleting paragraph 5.
It's deleted. This one is deleted.
Okay, it's deleted. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay, the next 6 and 7 were intact. They haven't been amended.
Yeah. So that means, excuse me, we can adopt this one.
Of course.
Yeah.
The rest.
Mr. Rapporteur, yeah?
The rest can be adopted.
Please tell me which. 6 is adopted, 7 is adopted, 8 is adopted. Please, a bit quicker.
8, 9 is
8, 9,
sur le point 8, Madame la Présidente.
Please, Algeria.
Je souhaiterais apporter une petite modification de forme au point 8, si vous le permettez. Accueille aussi favorablement l'inclusion des paragraphes relatifs aux peuples autochtones et le patrimoine mondial. Ces paragraphes ne concernent pas directement les peuples autochtones, mais ils concernent les aspects et les questions relatifs aux peuples autochtones. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Mr. Rapporteur?
Okay, 8 is not. Shall we adopt 8? 9 as well? No amendments?
No.
What? Okay.
Yeah. I think the numbers are not correct.
These are the new numbering.
The numbers are not correct. We have to.
Okay. I can't.
Also for the French version, I see.
I can switch to English.
Yeah. Okay. Please.
Okay. 8. The Algerian amendment. Can we please ask Algeria to repeat the amendment? Can you please
could you
slowly
repeat your suggestion?
Oui, bien sûr. Accueille aussi favorablement l'inclusion des paragraphes relatifs aux peuples autochtones, et le patrimoine mondial. Merci.
I think everybody agrees, yeah? Yeah.
So it's l'inclusion. Donc l'Algérie propose un amendement au nouveau paragraphe 9. Le nouveau paragraphe 9, donc selon lequel le comité accueille aussi favorablement l'inclusion des paragraphes relatifs aux peuples autochtones et le patrimoine mondial. Donc et réitère sa décision de réexaminer. Voilà, il y a la suite de l'amendement. Donc le comité accueille aussi favorablement l'inclusion des paragraphes relatifs aux peuples autochtones et au patrimoine mondial. Voilà. And yes, so this is...
All right.
Okay.
Yeah. Then this paragraph, and now it's in the French version, it's paragraph 9? It's both 9? Both 9. Paragraph 9 is adopted. 10? What about 10?
10 nothing, 11, new 11 intact, so they can be adopted, I think.
Yeah. 10 and 11 are adopted.
The new paragraph 12, the committee, Poland, the amendment has been proposed by Poland, and according to which the committee requests furthermore the World Heritage Center and advisory bodies to undertake consultations on paragraph 108 and subsequent paragraphs where references are made to management plans and management systems in order to address inconsistencies and ambiguities and to provide further clarifications based on current thinking and the contents of the resource manuals for consideration during the next revision of the operational guidelines in 2019.
Point of order for Turkey.
Madam Chair, paragraph 10, we were going to introduce 61 and. Because for the sake of logic, terminological integrity, I have stated that earlier. 61 and 68.
61 and 68? Yeah. Oh, sorry, yeah. It was 10. Okay. So I have it to adopt again. Yeah, sorry. I come back to 10, yeah? And now in the correct version, yeah. It's adopted in this version. Thank you, Turkey. Now back to 12.
Back to 12. So can we, do you want me to read it back? Okay, so according to Poland, the World Heritage Committee requests furthermore the World Heritage Center and advisory bodies to undertake consultations on paragraph 108 and subsequent paragraphs where references are made to management plans and management systems in order to address inconsistencies and ambiguities and to provide further clarifications based on current thinking and the contents of the resource manuals for consideration during the next revision of the operational guidelines in 2019.
India, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have absolutely no problems with this formulation. In fact, we were saying right from the outset that let us take on a few sundry issues as felt necessary. But I've heard many members from the floor, committee members from the floor, saying that we should be restrictive in the scope of this working group. This is a bit self-contradictory. So, let me repeat, we have absolutely no problems. We'll go along with the consensus. We'll go along with the formulation. But I find it a little ironic that, you know, you're talking about restricting the scope and here you're expanding the scope.
Poland, please.
I just thank you, Honourable Delegate from India. We are not asking this working group to take up another paragraph. It's just to give a mandate for to the advisory bodies to prepare some points for the next revisions of the operational guidelines in 4 years' time.
But could that be made clear in the wording?
But I think it's clear. If there is anything which is not clear to the other committee members, we can look for the wording.
Portugal?
Thank you, Madam. We do agree with Poland that it is important to underline the management plans, management systems, and to clarify what they really mean, because they are intimately related to the state of conservation of World Heritage sites. And so I believe that this paragraph could help understand better what is requested to preserve the OUV of the sites. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you. And I look to India because there's written 2019. I think everything is all right. So, could we adopt this? Yes. Number 12 is adopted. Thank you. Next one.
Next one, 13. 13, no amendment has been brought.
So, number 13 is adopted. So, we come back. 240, please.
4 bis.
4 bis. 4 4 bis. It was a question if you have to add another paragraph. I don't think so. So this could be deleted. Yeah. That's right. Mr. Rapporteur. Also ich glaube, jetzt schauen wir noch mal genau hin. Das eine wäre der Paragraph 61 und das andere wäre, dass wir beibehalten jetzt noch den letzten Punkt, der Bezug auf die Nachhaltigkeit des World Heritage Fonds. Ich hätte dazu gerne noch mal eine Wortmeldung zu dem letzten Punkt. Gibt es jemand, der jetzt diesem Punkt Nachhaltigkeit, also Sustainability of the World Heritage Fund, widerspricht, dass dies Gegenstand der Working Group sein soll? Das sehe ich nicht, dann könnte das so bleiben. Und dann haben wir die Beschränkung, Recommendation am Paragraph 61. Und dann geht es weiter, as well as the Sustainability of the World Heritage Fund. Das wäre jetzt die Beschlussgrundlage. Und wenn ich keinen Widerspruch sehe, dann nehme ich das so an. Angenommen. Okay, danke schön. Und damit kommen wir zu der Annahme nach langer und Colombia. Please, Colombia, you have the floor.
Gracias, señora presidenta. No tenemos problema con el párrafo 4 bis, de acuerdo, como usted acaba de adoptarlo. Simplemente quisiera hacer una observación y pues en aras de poder avanzar para adoptar la decisión, quisiera simplemente que en los summary records de esta sesión del comité y en este punto específico retomáramos la idea de la distinguida embajadora de la India, porque creemos que es importante de que cada grupo regional, cada presidente de los grupos regionales en la sede de la UNESCO pueda también como adelantar las consultas con su grupo regional en aras de alimentar el debate y alimentar las opiniones que los representantes de cada región en el grupo ad hoc estarán presentando. Simplemente pedirle al relator y a la secretaría para que en el informe, en los summary records, se tome nota de esta recomendación o de esta invitación para que esta consulta regional se haga. Gracias, presidente.
I think that's the experience shows that that is very important and that this works. Now Senegal has the floor.
Juste, Madame la Présidente, j'ai peut-être pas tout à fait suivi les développements, mais je croyais qu'on avait accepté d'ouvrir quand même les discussions au-delà du paragraphe 61 Senso Structure, parce qu'il peut y avoir quand même des questions liées et qu'on va aller chercher ailleurs. Je croyais que cette idée était acceptée, mais je me rends compte qu'elle est biffée. Peut-être que j'ai mal compris.
Es tut mir leid, die Mehrheit hatte also es gab Konsens zu dieser Reduzierung, ich habe das auch vorgelesen, auf den Paragraphen 61 und auf die Nachhaltigkeit mit Blick auf den Welterbefonds, und diese 4b ist inzwischen angenommen. Und jetzt komme ich zur Gesamtannahme. Und hiermit, wenn kein Widerspruch ist, und das sehe ich so, dass keiner ist, nehme ich 39,11 Review in der geänderten Fassung an. Dankeschön. Das war eine intensive Diskussion, die wir jetzt hatten, aber ich glaube, diese Diskussion war es wert, weil sie die Weichen stellt für zukünftige Arbeit, und nach den Erfahrungen, die ich persönlich auch gesammelt hatte mit der Ad-Hoc Working Group, kann ich nur sagen, es wird hilfreich sein. Ich glaube, es war auch klug, dass wir jetzt die Konzentration so vorgenommen haben. Ich möchte allen, die daran mitgewirkt haben, sehr herzlich danken und darf der Türkei, die die Leitung übernehmen wird, dafür alles Gute wünschen. Und jetzt kommen wir zum nächsten Tagesordnungspunkt. Das ist der Tagesordnungspunkt. Wir hatten uns verabredet für Item 15 jetzt. The Agenda, ja. The Budget. Und ich darf dazu das Wort unserer Vorsitzenden geben. Sie haben das Wort. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have the pleasure to introduce the draft decision of the Budget Working Group. As you know, the Budget Working Group was established as a standing consultative body to examine budgetary and financial issues on item 15. Budget Working Group started its work on Tuesday, the 30th of June, and concluded its work on Saturday, on 4th of July, after almost 12 hours of debates. That includes a joint meeting with the working group on the revision of the operational guidelines. The Budget Working Group had in its meetings between 40 to 50 participants from 29 states parties, among which 15 committee members. I would like to thank you, Madam Chair, Minister Böhme, for your continuous efforts along this meeting to help convening the participants of the Budget Group. Thank you, Madam Chair. The Chief Financial Officer of UNESCO, Mrs. Newton Wozencroft, was also participating in the Budget Working Group, and her presentations were most useful. I would also like to thank the advisory bodies, ICOMOS, IUCN, and ICROM, as well as the Secretariat, for their extremely useful presentations for the Budget Working Group. The task of the Budget Working Group was not easy. There were difficult questions to consider, as the ad hoc group, chaired by Germany, the esteemed host country, had not been able to come to consensus on the recommendations on the questions of finance. In addition, the timetable pressed the Budget Group to meet partly at the same time as the Working Group on the revision of the operational guidelines. I am now pleased to report back to the plenary the main content of our debates and the content of the draft decision 39-15 Rev. Contents firstly regarding the current financial situation, secondly the budget proposal for the World Heritage Fund for the biennium 2016-2017, and thirdly cost-saving and efficiency measures and resource mobilization. With the inclusion of two alternatives to paragraph 24, the Budget Working Group reached consensus on the content of the draft decision. Firstly, I would touch upon the current financial situation. The main focus of the discussion was on how to strengthen the sustainability of the World Heritage Fund. The financing of the World Heritage activities has had a decreasing trend since 2010. The Budget Group expressed its deep concern of the current financial situation of the World Heritage Fund, which has hampered its ability to provide for activities related to the convention, including international assistance. The Budget Group noted with concern the worsening trend in terms of the share of funding in the World Heritage Fund directed to conservation and nominations. The General Assembly and the World Heritage Committee have highlighted conservation as a top priority. In spite of this, the actual stand of expenses of budgeting does not reflect this prioritization. Of the funding, 52% goes to nominations and 48% to conservation. Therefore, the draft decision calls for increasing the proportion of the World Heritage Fund dedicated to conservation. The Budget Group strongly calls upon Member States to pay their assessed contributions in time and as early in the year as possible. the budget group again calls upon states parties to allocate voluntary contributions to the World Heritage Fund, especially to the sub-accounts of international assistance and human capacities. The need to continue further resource mobilization, voluntary contributions, fundraising, and public-private partnerships was emphasized. One delegation also stressed the need to examine various options for increasing voluntary financial contribution by state parties related to new nominations. The member states showed great interest to be briefed about the budget along the year, and in the draft decision requests the World Heritage Center, in collaboration with the advisory bodies, to hold a budget briefing as part of the information session prior to each session of the committee. Regarding the reports on state of conservation, the budget group requests the World Heritage Center, in collaboration with advisory bodies, to explore and report options to extend the reporting cycle for state of conservation sites, depending on the degree of urgency at the site. And regarding the committee meeting cycle, the draft decision also requests to prepare an analysis on implications of transferring to a 2-year meeting cycle of the committee, in order to allow more time for evaluation and conservation activities, bearing in mind the aims of the global strategy. Madam Chair, with regard to the current financial situation, the budget group proposed to approve the budget adjustments within the World Heritage Fund to fund international assistance requests. The budget group also accepted the operating reserve to cover ICOMOS's request for additional funding. In order to allow the execution of the committee's decisions and to respond to emergency needs, the budget working group proposed to authorize the Director General to make transfers between the action lines and reserves up to an amount of 20% of the initial budget, to a maximum amount of $250,000. Secondly, I'm turning to the budget proposal for the next 2 years. The budget group proposed to approve the budget proposal of the World Heritage Fund for 2016 and 2017 for the next 2 years. According to the expenditure plan, this is $5.1 million, as shown in Annex 5 of the document 15. Thirdly, I would turn to cost-saving and efficiency measures and resource mobilization. The budget group weighed the 8 options presented in the comparative analysis of further efficiency and cost-saving measures and resource mobilization that could contribute to the sustainability to the fund. These were presented in the budget document 15. This analysis was prepared by the Secretariat as requested by the committee last year. These 8 options are comprised of 3 elements: number of nominations in committee meetings, number of state of conservation reports, and thirdly, the frequency of the committee meetings. The budget working group discussed solution in terms of addressing the division between funding directed to conservation and to nominations. The group discussed how these measures would offer savings and efficiency and reduction of workload in order to strengthen the sustainability of financing and to maintain the quality of the World Heritage work. Madam Chair, there are 2 alternatives in the draft decision for these measures, for paragraph 24. Both alternatives maintain the present yearly meeting cycle of the committee. The results of the operational guidelines working group have, of course, effect on these alternatives. The first alternative is option 3 of the budget document WHC 15/39.com.15, which reads as follows: decides as a primary measure to adopt the option 3 presented in the document WHC 15/39.com/15, delivering an estimated saving of 2018 $76. A, reducing the annual limit of nominations from 45 to 25, and B, reducing the number of state of conservation reports from 150 to 120, with the final number of SOCs considered any year to be determined on the advice of the advisory bodies. The second alternative, also dependent on the outcome of the operational guidelines working group that has been presented. It reads as follows. Further notes that the amendment to paragraph 61A of the operational guidelines to bracket remove the exemption to allow 2 nominations per year per state party bracket may bring an additional saving of a sum left open bracket taking into account an estimated number of new nominations, which could be reduced to an order of 27 to 32 based on the past trend. Decides to adopt, if necessary, further reduction of the number of SOC reports examined annually by the World Heritage Committee from 150 to 120, an estimated saving of $74,696. These are the 2 alternatives which were included in this draft decision for paragraph 24. In conclusion, I would like to thank warmly the host country, Germany, for the professional facilities and support personnel and volunteers which it made available to the Budget Working Group. Madam Chair, I would like to thank all the committee members, the delegates of state parties and observers, the advisory bodies, ICOMOS, IUCN and ICROM, and the Secretariat for the excellent cooperation, valuable contributions, active and most useful discussions, and most of all, the good atmosphere in which we conducted the work in the Budget Group. On behalf of the Budget Group, I submit the draft decision 39/15 Rev for the committee's consideration and adoption. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Huhtamäki, Mrs. Chairperson. I think it was a very intensive work you did in your working group, and may I say I'd like to congratulate for your excellent work on this matter. Thank you. You are very experienced in this field. I'd like to discuss it now, but I announced that we will finish today with the introduction, and therefore we will continue tomorrow morning at 9:30. And please be prepared that we use lunchtime to finish the discussions of all items. It will be a very tough work because we have to discuss item 9B, then item 5E, item 30A, and then everything which, and of course 8C, item 12, item 13B, 14, 10B, 16, 17 and 18. Yes, that's 8C. Only Jerusalem. Yeah, and that's quite a lot. So we have to concentrate tomorrow morning. And nevertheless, as I thank you so much for this intensive discussion today, and now I wish you, wherever you spend the evening, a pleasant evening. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Chairperson. I would like just to remind the members of the committee that tonight we will have the side event on the conclusion of the second cycle of the periodic reporting in Europe and North America, which will take place starting, it should have started at 6:30 onwards in the Pump House building in this center. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson.